Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the wind-whipped shadowlands of the American railways circa the early 20th century, where the boxcars groaned through sleet and snow and survival meant knowing more than just how to catch a train. You're going to become a hobo, one of the untethered many who rode the rails chasing warmth, work, and just enough food to keep moving. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. The cold doesn't care how clever you are, or how fast your hands can climb a ladder when the bull's on your tail. It creeps into your boots, settles behind your ribs, and waits for you to stop moving. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do to September. Let me know in the comments what city you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first frost catches you somewhere outside Duluth. It's early November, and you're clinging to the edge of a half-empty boxcar, breath fogging up in the moonlight, your coat doing absolutely nothing against the sudden slap of wind. You weren't ready. You never are the first time. That cold hits you with a kind of casual cruelty, as if it's just part of the landscape, like pine trees and gravel, and the steel bones of the train beneath your boots. You pull your collar up tighter, but it's a losing game. Every seam in your jacket leaks heat. Every gust finds its way in. And tonight, the temperature's falling fast. Inside the boxcar, there's not much. A few coils of rusted wire, some hay scattered across the floor, and in the corner a man who's either sleeping or dead. You don't want to find out which. You wedge yourself into a corner opposite him and try to disappear into your own limbs. The wind cuts through the cracks in the wooden slats, but at least you're not out in the open anymore. The sound of the rails, metal on metal, that endless scream softened by distance, becomes the rhythm of your heartbeat. You start shivering, and then you don't. That's when it gets dangerous. When your body stops trying to warm itself, that's when people lie down and never get up again. There's a name they give to nights like this: white-knuckle cold. Not because you're scared, though you are, but because you physically can't unclench your hands. Your fingers are locked, your face stings like 1,000 needles, and your ears, well, you won't feel those until sometime tomorrow if they're still yours. You try to sleep, but your body won't let you. Every time you close your eyes, something primal jerks them back open. Something ancient inside you that knows. Sleeping right now could be the last thing you ever do, so you hum to yourself. Songs from home, nonsense words, anything to stay awake. Eventually, the train slows. It's maybe 3 in the morning. The kind of dark that swallows sound. You don't know where you are, you don't care, you jump off anyway. Your feet hit gravel hard and you stumble, catch yourself, and feel that shock of cold shoot up through your legs. Your boots are cheap. You found them near a construction site in Kansas City. Beat up leather, one size too big, no lining. You thought you'd scored. Now your toes are wet and blistered and already starting to go numb. You follow the tracks for a while, hoping for a depot, a shack, a lean-to, anything with a roof and 4 walls. You pass a frozen creek, a stand of trees, and then, finally, you see it. A small maintenance shed, unlocked, half buried in snowdrift, with a broken padlock dangling uselessly from the door. You go inside. It smells like oil and wet wood. Inside there's a bench, a busted lantern, and a coffee can filled with cigarette butts. On the wall, scratched into the timber, is a hobo symbol, a circle with 2 horizontal lines through it. You don't know what it means yet, but you will. Soon. You sit down on the bench, arms wrapped around your legs, and press your forehead against your knees. You listen to the wind batter the walls like it's trying to get in. It's the kind of moment people never write about in history books. Too small, too dirty, but these are the real snapshots of survival, the quiet acts, the almosts and maybes, the time you didn't die. That counts for something. There's a historical record that says nearly 500,000 people lived like this during the Great Depression, hopping freight trains and chasing rumours of work. But records lie. The truth is probably higher. There were children out here, entire families among, sometimes, and women too, though they had it harder in ways nobody liked to talk about. There's one case, a fringe fact whispered like legend, of a woman called Freightcar Fanny. She dressed as a man, travelled the lines from St. Louis to Butte, and was known for smuggling sandwiches to other hobos tucked under her overcoat. No one knows what happened to her. Some say she froze to death in Montana, others say she married a brakeman and vanished into normal life. But her name still gets carved into the walls of rail sheds, when someone remembers. Back in the shed, you're still shaking. You find a rag near the bench and wraps it around your neck like a scarf. It smells like axle grease and someone else's sweat, but it helps. You wedge your pack beneath your feet and try to trap some heat. Every piece of knowledge you collect out here is like a matchstick in a blizzard. Tiny. Temporary, but vital. What historians still debate is whether this massive movement of transient people was truly a symptom of the Great Depression, or a deeper cultural rebellion against structure, against the cages of routine and poverty and pretense. Were the hobos victims of an economic collapse, or were they pioneers of a new kind of freedom? It's a question you ask yourself now, while staring at the frost forming on the inside of the shed window. You didn't plan for this life, but you're living it anyway, and that means learning fast, or freezing slow. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, just to rest, just for a second. Outside, the wind screams across the rails like it's hungry. When morning drags itself out of the trees, it doesn't bring warmth, just light. Pale, indifferent light, the kind that makes everything look frozen into place. You peel yourself off the bench in the shed, your limbs protesting like rusted hinges. Your knees crack. Your neck aches from sleeping hunched over. Your breath still shows. Everything hurts, and you're not even fully awake yet. That's just how it goes out here. Morning is a punishment, but at least it means you made it through the night. You stretch, pull your coat tighter, and step outside. The snow has a crust on top that crunches under your feet. Somewhere a crow caws, sharp and mocking. You kick your boots against the frozen earth, trying to get blood back into your toes. Still numb. That's not great. What you need now is direction. Food, fire, company, maybe. Something to remind you that you're not drifting in a dream or a nightmare. So you start walking again, scanning every post, every fence, every doorway for something most folks wouldn't even notice. The marks. This is your first lesson in the Hobo Code. It's not written in any book. It's not taught in schools. It's passed down on water towers, scratched into gateposts, and carved under bridges by those who came before. It's a system of survival symbols invented by necessity and kept alive by memory. Each sign is small, quick, and easy to miss. But if you know what to look for, it can save your life. On a picket fence near the tracks, you spot a circle with 2 diagonal lines through it. You pause. You saw something like this in that maintenance shed, didn't you? Not exactly the same, but close. This one means get out fast. A warning. Maybe someone inside doesn't take kindly to visitors. Maybe it's worse. Either way, you don't linger. A few minutes later, you find a different mark etched into a telephone pole. 2 horizontal lines stacked like an equal sign. Safe place to sleep, if you're lucky. You approach the house it's pointing towards slowly, watching for dogs, listening for voices. But the windows are dark. The porch is empty. A pot of something scorched sits on the back steps. You creep closer and find a barn around back, half collapsed, but dry inside. It's not much, just some broken crates and mouldy hay, but it's shelter. You sit for a moment, listening to the silence. You're learning to read this new language, one born out of movement and hunger, inked in chalk and coal. The code is your map now, your firewall against the cold. The origins of the Hobo Code are debated, like everything else about hobo life. Some scholars say it began in earnest around the 1880s, when industrialization and expansion created more train lines, and more people desperate enough to follow them. Others argue it existed informally much earlier, passed among Civil War veterans and runaway apprentices. Either way, by the time you're out here, the code is sacred. There are symbols for everything. A cat means a kind woman lives inside. A cross might mean religious folks, usually good for soup or old clothes. A top hat with a smile. Rich folks, but stingy. Best to move along. You keep walking. On a train trestle not far from town, you find a chalk arrow pointing toward a culvert under the bridge. Another symbol. A triangle with hands inside. Good people live nearby. Help if you ask right. You smile at that. It's rare, but it happens. There are still pockets of humanity out here. People who understand that not everyone on the rails is dangerous or lazy or drunk. Some are just in transit. That culvert is cold, but it's dry, and you curl up inside for an hour or two while the wind howls outside. You think about the people who mark the signs, strangers, ghosts, guides. You're walking in their footsteps, living inside their warnings and promises. One of the more bizarre facts about the Hobo Code. It was briefly studied during World War II by military intelligence. They thought it might be a model for covert signalling in enemy territory. Quick, minimal marks that could convey complex meanings. Funny how something born in desperation became a possible blueprint for spycraft. Back in the culvert, you sip from your canteen, the water tasting metallic and faintly frozen. Your fingers are still stiff, so you rub them together. Clench and unclench your fists. You don't have gloves, not really. Just socks you've cut holes into and pulled over your hands. You look ridiculous, but out here, looking ridiculous keeps your knuckles. You remember something one of the old heads said back at the last jungle camp? Don't ever sleep near a sign that's been crossed out. That means the rules changed, and not for the better. You didn't know what he meant at the time, but now, seeing a warning slashed through with fresh paint on a railside wall, you understand. Some places go bad. Some towns change mayors or tipus or policies, and suddenly what used to be a warm porch is a shotgun greeting. The code lives and breathes like the people who made it. Not all signs are universal either. In the southwest you might see symbols drawn in sand. In New England they scratch into slate. In cities, chalk on bricks. In the Midwest, where you are now, they use charcoal, soot, even nails scratched into metal. You keep a piece of soapstone in your pocket now, just in case. Not just for reading, but for writing. You haven't made your first mark yet. That takes a certain weight. Responsibility. You want to be sure before you leave something for the next person. Because out here, false hope is more dangerous than no hope at all. It's getting late again. The sky is that bleached winter grey that never quite turns to night, just deepens into shadow. You decide to push on. There's supposed to be a jungle, Hobo Camp, a mile outside town near the river bend. If you're lucky, they'll have a barrel fire going, maybe a pot of beans, maybe someone who's been out here longer than you who'll explain how to keep your boots from icing on the inside. You leave the culvert, cross the tracks, and head into the trees. As you walk, you spot one more symbol carved into a tree stump. A heart with a lightning bolt through it. You don't know that one yet, you keep going. The road to the jungle camp winds through a tangle of scrub pine and frozen brush, your feet crunching over twigs like brittle bones. It's not a road, really, just a path worn down by hundreds of footsteps like yours. You follow the tracks because that's what you do now. Always follow the tracks, even when they vanish beneath snow or mud or memory. It's like some unspoken compass among the rail folk. When in doubt, walk where the metal sleeps. You're freezing again. Surprise, your breath is a slow puff in the air. And every few minutes you clap your hands or stomp your feet to trick your body into thinking you're still warm. You're not. But the movement keeps frostbite from claiming your fingers just yet. Eventually you see it. The jungle. Not firelight, not smoke. You see the shapes first. The silhouettes of makeshift shelters scattered beneath the trees like crooked teeth. A half circle of crates, pallets, tarps, and bent tin roofing. And beyond that the warm orange glow of a barrel fire dancing in the dusk. There are people here, 6 or 7 at least, men mostly, and one woman with short hair under a cap stirring something in a dented pot. They don't look up when you approach, but they don't bristle either. That's a good sign. You step into the light slowly, hands out, palms visible, standard etiquette. Cute. You don't want anyone thinking you're trouble. Evening, one of the men grunts, barely glancing your way. You nod and settle near the edge of the fire. The heat is shocking. Your skin almost aches from it. You turn your palms toward the flame and hold them there until the numbness begins to thaw into pain. No one asks your name. That's not how it works out here. Names are optional. Stories are traded instead. Where you came from, what the bulls are like in Omaha this week, how cold it got last night in the rail yard. You listen. You're new, so you shut up and listen. That's how you learn. One of them, a wiry old guy with a cough like gravel, passes you a battered tin cup with something warm inside. It tastes like coffee but smells like rust and regret. Doesn't matter. You drink it like it's a miracle. Then someone asks, "You got a bindle?" You shake your head. Not properly anyway. You've got a pillowcase tied off with twine and stuffed with what little you own. A change of socks, a can opener. A worn-out picture of someone you don't talk about. They chuckle, not cruelly, more like a tired kind of amusement. Then the woman with the cap stands and gestures toward a blanket rolled up near her bedroll. Grab that. We'll fix you up. Making a bindle isn't just about tying your things in a knot and slinging it over your shoulder. That's cartoon nonsense. Out here, it's part ritual, part survival. You need balance, durability, quick access. A good bindle can mean the difference between keeping your essentials and scattering them across a rail yard when you get chased by a bull. She walks you through it. First, you spread out the blanket. Wool, if you're lucky, this one is. You lay your gear inside, your knife, socks, matches, the stub of a candle, a can of beans, the tin pong cup. Roll it up tight, then cross it over with a piece of rope. 2 loops, 2 knots. No slippage, tuck the end under itself. She shows you how to tie it to a stick, real hickory, not some green branch that'll snap when you're halfway up a freight ladder. The weight should sit high on your shoulder, not drag behind you. It's not glamorous, but it's yours. You keep that dry and you might just live to see March, she says, handing it over. She's been out here 5 winters, she tells you later. Used to be a seamstress. Chicago. Factory shut down, and no one hired women over 30. Her name used to be Clara. Now people just call her Stitch. She doesn't mind. There's a rhythm to jungle camps, quiet, unwritten rules. You don't touch someone's bindle, you don't ask about scars, you take turns tending the fire, even if your fingers are too stiff to hold the poker. And if someone leaves food behind, you leave it alone for a day. Might be they're coming back. Might be they didn't make it. Either way, it's not yours until the fire dies out cold. Later, someone starts humming low and off-key. The song floats above the fire like smoke. No one joins in, but no one tells him to stop either. It's comfort, a kind of fragile peace. You settle deeper into your coat, now bundled with the fresh knowledge of how to keep your things together. There's a historical theory still debated, that the hobo bindle actually evolved from Civil War soldier kit rolls. Same concept. Wrap your essentials in cloth, keep it dry, keep it close. Others argue it came from sailors or wandering tradesmen. Either way, the hobo bindle became its own artifact. Part luggage, part lifeline. But not everyone agrees. Some fringe historians argue the whole bindle stick thing was mostly a myth, created by illustrators and newsmen who wanted to cartoonify homelessness. According to them, most real hobos used sacks, canvas shoulder bags, even suitcases when they could find them. The iconic stick-over-the-shoulder bindle? More image than function. Doesn't really matter to you, though. Yours works. That's all that counts. When the fire burns low, Stitch digs through her coat and pulls out a battered spoon wrapped in cloth. Here, she says. Found it in a camp near Fargo. Stainless. Better than eating with your hands. You take it and it feels like treasure. Heavy. Real. Cold now, but it'll be warm tomorrow morning when you use it to scrape the burnt bits out of a pot of beans. Your first night in the jungle ends with your back against a pine tree, your bindle tucked beside you like a sleeping dog. You're not warm, but you're not alone, that's something. Out here it's everything. Above you the stars blink through bare branches, cold and distant. Someone coughs, someone snores. The fire crackles, and for the first time since you stepped onto the rails, you feel like you belong somewhere. Even if it's just in the silence between strangers. The cold doesn't just creep into your bones out here, it becomes part of you. The next morning your joints ache like they've aged 50 years overnight. Your breath fogs before your face, and the edges of your blanket are stiff with frost. You wake up to the smell of something burning, but not in a good way. It's trash fire time. You drag yourself toward the warmth like a zombie in slow motion. A few of the others are already gathered around a barrel, the bottom lined with whatever scraps of wood and paper they could scavenge from nearby. Old fruit crates, rotted shingles, even a chair leg someone pried off a porch last night. The fire burns dirty, thick with smoke that smells like varnish, wet cardboard and cheap glue. Still you hold your hands out to it like it's the sun itself. Trash fires are the great equalizer. Doesn't matter if you were a banker, a barber, or a bricklayer before all this, you huddle around the same barrel now. There's no room for ego when your eyelashes are freezing. The fire flickers and pops, a few embers floating up into the blue morning like lost fireflies. The barrel is warped and blackened, rim dented from 100 kicks, dents and and desperate relightings. It's not beautiful, but it's life. Someone passes you a can. The label's long gone, just bare tin now. You pop it open with your pocket knife. Inside, the beans are clumped and congealed, but they're food. You jab a stick through the top and balance it on the fire's edge. The bottom starts to blacken immediately. You stir it a little and try not to think about how much paint and garbage smoke you're probably inhaling. Let it bubble, says the man next to you. That's how you know it won't kill you. He's missing 2 fingers and smells like kerosene, but you nod like he's a prophet. Out here he kind of is. You take your spoon, your stainless steel prize from Stitch, and scoop out the first bite. It's scalding, mushy, and tastes vaguely of smoke and metal. You eat like it's the best thing you've ever had. Fire barrels are a staple in the hobo world. They show up anywhere a group settles in for more than a day, under bridges, behind warehouses, in forgotten city alleys and on the edge of every jungle camp worth the name. You've already learned the rules. You don't throw plastic in there unless you hate the people you're with. You don't hog the heat, and you don't light one too early in the evening. You wait until night so you don't draw attention. Some old-timers talk about certain barrel fires like they're sacred sites. There's a story going around about a campfire in Spokane that's been burning off and on for 12 winters. Every year, someone relights it in the same spot using the same rusty barrel, passed down like an heirloom. Total myth, probably. But still, it's a nice thought, a sort of fragile continuity in a world where nothing stays put. The fringe side of hobo culture tells a weirder story, though, about what happens when you throw certain things into the fire. According to one drifter, if you burn a page from a preacher's Bible, the fire burns blue and no one in the camp will sleep through the night. Another claims that if you heat a tin of beans without opening it, the explosion will summon the ghost of a former railman who'll curse your boots to leak forever. Probably nonsense. Still, you always crack the lid first. As you stare into the flames, you realise something. Trash fires aren't warm. Not really. They give off enough heat to thaw your hands, maybe warm a can of food, but the second you step back, the cold swallows you whole again. It's like standing in a doorway between two worlds. Inside the ring of fire, you're a person. Step outside, you're prey to the wind again. Someone pulls out a harmonica and starts playing. Not a song you know, not even a tune really, just long, breathy notes that rise and fall like a sigh. It's haunting somehow, a soundtrack for burning trash and shivering hope. You eat your beans slowly. Every bite stretches time. You're aware of every chew, every swallow, because there's no guarantee of another meal after this one. You watch the others closely, not because you don't trust them, but because you're learning. The way one guy holds his cup against the barrel for exactly 3 seconds. The way Stitch keeps her hands moving even when sitting to keep her fingers from locking up. The way someone else counts their matches before every use. You finish your beans and wipe the spoon on your sleeve. Then you sit back and do what everyone does when the food's gone and the fire's low. You stare at nothing, at everything, into the flames, into your own thoughts. You think about home, whatever that means now. You think about your parents, if they're still alive, your brother, maybe, or that girl whose name you only say in your head, because speaking it out loud feels too heavy. A younger guy joins the circle. He can't be older than 16, face thin and raw-looking, like it hasn't had time to age into its own shape yet. He's wearing 2 shirts and no coat. Someone slides closer and silently offers him a seat by the barrel. No questions asked. That's the unspoken code of the fire. Everyone's cold. Everyone eats. If there's space, you share it. Historians have long argued over whether hobo camps like these represented the collapse of society, or its reinvention. Were these jungle fires proof of a system failing, or proof that even when systems fail, people still build something to survive together? There's still no consensus, but standing around this fire, you know one thing for sure. Whatever this is, it's real. It's raw and alive and utterly necessary. Eventually someone stands and tosses in another piece of wood. The fire flares, illuminating the underside of everyone's jaw like a haunted painting. The wind picks up again, sharp and slicing. People hunch lower, you do too. For a moment you wish you could stay here forever. Just this circle, just this heat. Just this simple shared understanding that out here, in the wilderness between towns and dreams, you're part of something, even if it's just the act of surviving another cold, smoky, bean-flavoured day. You start to learn that warmth out here is an illusion, not just the kind that comes and goes with the trash fires, but the kind you try to build with clothes too. The jungle clears out just after sunrise. People move on fast. The fire's doused, tin cans tucked into packs or tossed aside, and within minutes the space looks abandoned again. You pack your bindle tight, scarf down the last cold bite of beans, and join the silent exodus toward the tracks. It's colder today. Bone-deep cold, wind like razors sliding under your collar, and you're already wearing every layer you have. You've got a flannel shirt under a second-hand coat that's missing 3 buttons and smells like gasoline. Under that, a grey t-shirt stiff with sweat from a warmer day that feels like it happened to someone else. Your pants are denim, patched at the knees, and your socks. Well, they've seen better centuries. But the trick isn't just what you wear, it's how you wear it. That's what the veterans tell you. Layer smart, seal the seams, Add padding in all the places heat tries to escape. That's where the cardboard and newspaper come in. You find a gas station on the edge of town, closed, long since. The windows are broken, and the inside's been picked clean. But near the back, tucked behind a rusted fridge unit, you strike gold. A stack of old newspapers. Yellowed, damp around the edges, but still legible. One of the front pages shows a headline about Roosevelt. You don't know if it's the first or second one. You grab a few pages and shove them under your shirt, spreading them flat across your chest like armour. Then more around your shins, your thighs, your lower back. You tighten your belt to hold them in place, feeling instantly ridiculous, and somehow warmer. Next up, cardboard. You find a cereal box in a trash heap behind a diner, barely intact, but it'll work. You tear it into strips and slide them between your socks and the soles of your boots, giving your feet a makeshift insole to buffer the chill. Then 2 big pieces go under your coat, folded at the spine and jammed against your ribs. Your silhouette looks like a crumpled scarecrow now, but you'd trade style for circulation any day. This method isn't new. It's a survival hack passed down through the ranks of the forgotten. You remember Stitch telling you that newspaper's the best insulator when you've got nothing else. It traps air close to the body, like a second skin made of headlines and advertisements. A homeless man once told a reporter in the 30s that nothing warms the soul like the obituaries. He meant it literally. Those pages were the thickest. There's even a weird little fringe rumour among hobos that certain articles work better than others. Sports pages? Useless. Obits and classifieds? Magic. One guy swore editorials carried residual body heat from the anger they were written with. Some even carried around clippings of war updates or local murders, claiming the darker the story, the better the insulation. None of it makes sense, but you still pick the obituaries first, just in case. As the wind howls through the alleyway, you wrap a sheet of newsprint around your neck like a scarf, then stuff a few extra pages down your sleeves. It crinkles with every move and you feel like a walking fire hazard. But you're warm. Kind of. Enough to keep walking. You pass a school, empty and echoing with ghost sounds. There's a wooden fence near the edge of the playground with another hobo symbol scratched into the slats, a jagged X inside a square. You squint at it. That one means man with a gun lives here. You steer clear. Further down, a church. You don't go in. The code's mixed about churches. Some offer shelter and stew, others turn you away or call the bulls. But behind it, beside the garbage bins, there's a pile of worn-out clothes. Donation overflow. You rifle through it quick, hoping for something warm. A wool sock, maybe. A glove. What you find is even better. A moth-bitten trench coat, lined with something that might once have been fleece. You throw it on over your current layers. It smells like basement and mothballs and maybe mildew. You don't care. Now you're 2 coats deep and rustling like a newspaper stand in a hurricane. You keep walking. The sound of the rails gets louder again. There's a yard just outside town. A spot where trains pause, change crews, take on fuel. That's where you're headed. Not to catch a ride, not yet. Just to warm up. Some of the cars carry coal. Some, grain. Others, they leak heat from the brakes, the engines, the cargo. Just enough to huddle beside for a while. When you get there, the yard is quiet. A few bulls patrol the perimeter, but you know how to stay in the shadows. You press your body against the side of a refrigerated boxcar, paradoxically warm from the exhaust vent. You rest there, trying not to fall asleep, trying not to let the warmth lull you into stillness. Because that's the real trick of the cold. It doesn't kill fast. It kills by asking you to stop moving. Just sit, just rest, just close your eyes for 5 minutes, it whispers. And when you listen, that's when the cold really sinks its teeth in. There's a historical photo buried somewhere in the Library of Congress archive. A hobo in full paper and cloth armour, standing at the edge of a coal yard in Indiana. Layers of newspaper bulge from under his coat and a chunk of cardboard sticks out from one boot. The caption reads simply, "Unemployed man, winter 1933. No name, no story, just a body wrapped in yesterday's news. And yet, here you are, living the same scene. You shift your weight and pull the collar of your coat higher, holding the cardboard in place as the wind picks up. A train groans to life nearby, its engine hissing like a tired animal. You don't plan to hop it. Not yet. Not tonight. You're still learning the temperature of survival, and tonight, warmth looks like a rumpled coat and a heartbeat that keeps refusing to quit. So you wait, wrapped in stories, stuffed with ink and pulp and whatever heat history can lend you. Tomorrow you'll move again, but tonight you crinkle when you breathe. You don't plan to ride the blind baggage, not at first. It's suicide in weather like this. But when the train whistles low and long across the yard, and the engine starts to crawl forward like a steel leviathan, you know this is your only chance to get out of this icebox town before your toes go black. You tug your bindle tighter, slap your arms to chase the numbness away, and take one last glance behind you, then you run. The blind baggage, train slang for the small hidden platform between the tender and the baggage car, is the warmest illegal seat in the yard. It's risky as hell too. No doors, no walls, nothing to stop you from sliding off if the train lurches wrong or your grip gives out. They say more men freeze or fall off blind baggage than any other spot, but it's also just a few feet from the engine, which means heat. Just enough heat to matter. You scramble up the ladder, boots slipping once on the icy rungs, then haul yourself onto the narrow platform. It's barely wide enough for you to crouch. You brace your back against the metal wall, your knees to your chest, arms wrapped tight around your midsection. The train jerks, picks up speed, and you're off, rattling down tracks that shimmer with frost in the moonlight, wind screaming past your ears like it's trying to rip them off. And yet, the closer you press to the engine wall, the warmer it gets. Not warm exactly, just less deadly. The tender radiates heat from within, some residual furnace breath from the coal burning a few feet away. It's like crouching next to the devil's radiator. Your face burns with wind, your nose runs, and the snot freezes before it hits your lip. You've learned to breathe through your mouth, slow and steady, or risk feeling like your lungs are frosting over. You tug the collar of your coat up over your mouth, newspaper crinkling underneath, and try not to think about how far you've got to go, or how far you might fall. You ride that way for hours, maybe more. Time blurs into rattles and shivers. Somewhere around midnight, the train cuts through a wide expanse of farmland, the horizon glowing silver with moonlight. You see the lights of a small town up ahead and know the train will slow soon. That's when you'll jump off, if your legs still work. Your fingers are so stiff, you can't feel them anymore. You press them against the hot metal, watching steam curl up from your damp gloves. For a moment, you feel almost human again. There's a strange kind of beauty in this. The night air is so clear, so sharp, it's like being carved out of glass. Every sound is amplified. The squeal of wheels, the deep hum of the engine, the rhythmic clatter of metal on rail. It's the music of movement, of barely holding on, and you ride it like a prayer. You think about the old hobo songs, the ones that talked about riding the blinds like it was a badge of honor. Fast Freight Blues, the Big Rock Candy Mountain. Romantic names for desperate choices. Some old-timers swear riding close to the engine purifies you, cooks off the city's stink, scrubs your soul clean in soot and smoke. Others say the exact opposite, that it's death's porch swing, swaying with the rhythm of your last bad decision. Somewhere in between, probably. There's a story Stitch told one night by the fire, half whispered, half laughed, about a guy called Cold-Toothed Jimmy, who lost all his fingers riding blind baggage through a Wyoming blizzard, but refused to quit the rails. Said the train was the only woman who'd ever keep him warm. Fringe legend, maybe, but the way she said it made you wonder if she'd met him. Maybe everyone knows a version of Cold-Toothed Jimmy. Maybe you're becoming him. You reach the outskirts of the next town as dawn threatens to rise. The sky is that dull, pre-light grey that makes everything look flat and dreamlike. The train slows, brakes hissing. You stretch your legs carefully, then drop to the gravel when the speed feels survivable. Your knees buckle, but you stay upright, stumble a few steps, then stop. You're somewhere. That's enough. You walk away from the tracks, shaking, every joint screaming. You duck into a patch of trees and collapse behind a bush just far enough off the line to stay hidden. You lie there for a while, not sleeping, not moving, just catching your breath and waiting for the shivers to subside. When you finally stir, the sun is up but offers no warmth. You take stock, your coat's intact, your bindle's still tied. Your fingers ache like splintered ice, but they work. You feel like a survivor. Not in the triumphant Hollywood way, but in the real, broken, barely holding together way that no one writes songs about. You walk into town with your shoulders hunched and your eyes down. Looking for the next sign, the next barrel, the next place to stop, you pass a few homes, a boarded-up hardware store, a church with a sagging roof. In front of an old post office, you spot another hobo sign, a single triangle with 3 dots inside. It means train yard is watched. Dangerous. Too late. You'd just ridden the rails into a place you're not supposed to be, but you made it. And that counts for something. Historically, the blind baggage was a rite of passage in the hobo community. Not every rider dared it. Some preferred open boxcars, others stuck to grain hoppers or rode under the brake beams. But those who braved the blind baggage were seen as a special kind of tough or stupid depending on who you asked, and there's still debate among historians about how many lives it claimed. The records are murky. No one was counting the dead when the dead didn't have names, but the scars left on surviving riders, frostbite, missing limbs, trauma etched into every glance, those told the real story. You reach a small alley near the back of a diner. There's a dumpster, a few crates, and a broken barrel with black scorch marks around the rim. Someone was here recently. You sit on a crate and warm your hands against nothing, imagining the fire that used to live here, and in your coat crinkling with every breath you feel the engine's warmth lingering on your skin. It's gone now, but it kept you alive through the night. And out here, that's everything. You don't know what draws you to the sound. Maybe it's instinct, maybe it's hope, or maybe it's just the scent of something vaguely edible drifting on the wind. But about half an hour after you crawl off that crate behind the diner, you hear the low murmur of voices and the faint metallic clink of a pot lid being lifted. Jungle camp. You can feel it in your bones before you even see it. There's a pattern to these places. Always just out of sight, just off the road, just far enough into the woods that someone with clean boots wouldn't bother looking. You follow the trail. It's barely more than a flattened patch of dry grass between two rows of bare trees, but it carries the signs you now know by heart. Cigarette butts in a neat little pile, a coffee can rusted at the rim, a string tied around a branch that once held a shirt to dry. Someone even scratched the old safe place to rest symbol into the bark of a nearby tree, almost hidden by the curve of it. That kind of thing's like a handshake in this life, a low-key welcome. And then you see it, a clearing half surrounded by windbreaks made of scavenged plywood, pine boughs, and tarps stitched together with wire and rope. At the centre, the Holy Grail, a barrel fire, burning low but steady, its sides coated with a black gloss of old soot and fresh hope. This one's bigger than the last. Maybe 10 people milling around, their breath puffing out in bursts as they move between tasks. A woman in a threadbare coat is peeling potatoes over a dented wash basin. 2 men are crouched near the fire, talking low, and there's music. Someone's got a busted radio perched on a rock, faint static leaking out between chords of some old blues song. It's more than a camp. It's a whole hidden world. You stand at the edge of the clearing, bindle in hand, waiting. That's another unspoken rule. Don't just walk in. Let them see you, let them decide. One of the fire-sitters nods. Just a little. That's your in. You step forward slowly, the crinkle of newspaper under your coat giving you away with every move. You nod back. No words exchanged. You drop your bindle near a broken bucket, kneel by the barrel, and hold your hands over the warmth like it's a communion offering. It feels good, not great, but good. A few minutes pass before anyone says anything to you. Finally, the woman with the potatoes gives you a sideways glance. You just come off that northbound. You nod. Blind baggage? She asks, a little more interest in her voice. Another nod. She whistles. You're lucky. Wynn nearly took that kid from Des Moines last week. You're not sure what to say to that, so you just shrug. It's a hobo shrug, equal parts pride and exhaustion. She gestures with her chin. Coffee can's clean. Water's been boiled. Help yourself. You pour a little into a chipped tin cup near the fire, the heat rising up to fog your already numb face. It's not great coffee, too thin, too bitter, but it's warm. It kicks like memory and tastes like someone still cares. This jungle has structure. That's the first thing you notice. Someone stacked firewood. Someone else has rigged a tarp between trees to catch rain. There's even a half-buried crate labelled Trade filled with odds and ends, matches, buttons, a piece of soap, 2 spoons, a pair of socks tied together with twine. It's civilization. Rough, handmade, but real. You hear someone call out from behind one of the windbreaks. Breakfast! The word is less an invitation and more a notification. If you want to eat, now's the time. You get in line. There's a pot of potatoes and onions, barely seasoned, and something that might once have been a pork, cut into tiny strips. A man in a wool cap with no top scoops a spoonful into your bowl without a word. It's hot, it's salty, it's heaven. As you eat, you listen. Everyone's got a story, though most don't tell it straight. One guy claims he used to work for a travelling circus, fed the tigers, he says. Another insists he used to be a teacher, until the war turned his brain to fog. The woman who gave you coffee, her name's Dallas, which probably isn't real, says she was a nurse for a few years before everything unravelled. Now she travels from jungle to jungle like a nomad healer, patching people up with bits of cloth and a bottle of iodine that's more rust than medicine. You're asked where you're from, and you give the most generic answer possible, East. That satisfies them. Out here, specifics can get you into trouble. No one needs to know what you left behind. There's an old-timer in the camp named Red, named for the shock of colour that still clings to his beard even though the rest of his face has been carved by decades of cold. He tells you about the code again, this time more advanced stuff. 2 dots by a water spout, that's fresh water. Circle with a dot in the middle, that's a safe house for rail riders. He leans in closer, but you see a square with a slash through it. That means Cop lives here, don't even breathe on their lawn. There's debate in the camp about how long the jungle can last. The bulls have started making rounds more often. Someone says a kid got picked up in the next county for just being near the yard. Another guy swears the bulls are working with vigilantes now, local boys with flashlights and grudges. Fringe fact time, some rail towns in the 1930s paid private citizens to hunt vagrants. Not officially, of course, but there were whispers of bounties, $5 a head for anyone chased out of town, $10 if you brought proof, a button, a boot, something to show you'd done your duty. Modern historians are divided. Some say it's just urban myth. Others insist there are newspaper clippings buried deep in archives that confirm it. Either way, you sleep lightly that night. You find a corner of the camp not too close to the fire, but near enough to feel the warmth. Dallas gives you a scrap of blanket to supplement your coat and newspaper layers. You roll onto your side, curl around your bindle, and close your eyes. Somewhere in the woods, an owl calls. The trees creak softly in the wind. The fire snaps and hisses, and for the first time in a long time, you feel something almost like safety. You know it won't last. But for tonight, it's enough. It all falls apart around dusk the next day. You're just coming back from the edge of the woods where you'd gone to do your business. The kind of errand that reminds you how undignified survival can be when you hear shouting from the jungle. Not the usual kind either. This isn't someone arguing about trade goods or who gets the last scrape of beans. This is the kind of shouting that comes with boots. The bulls have come. You freeze for a moment. Your mind doing that useless thing where it tells you to wait, to listen, as if the outcome might change. But it doesn't. You hear crashing in the brush, the unmistakable thud of someone being thrown to the ground, and the gravelly bark of a voice yelling, "Move it! Move it!" Your legs remember what to do before your brain does. You pivot and run, not toward the camp, but away from it, into the thicker woods. The newspaper under your coat crackles like a warning bell, but there's no time to fix it. You duck beneath low branches, trip over a root, and catch yourself on the side of a tree, breath ragged. Behind you, voices fade, then spike again. A woman screams. You can't tell if it's Dallas. You want to go back, you do, but you know better. The train bulls, the hired guards who police the yards and the jungles, aren't interested in debate. You're trespassers, vagrants, human debris. Their job is to clear the line, and most of them do it with fists first and questions never. Some have clubs, some just have boots and no patience. If they catch you, they don't arrest you. They beat you down, throw your bindle into the river, and leave you bleeding in the ditch if you're lucky. And some don't stop there. There's an old story that surfaces every time a camp gets raided, about a bull in St. Louis who tied a man to the rails and walked away. Most say it's just a horror tale, a way to keep newcomers scared straight. But a few older riders claim they knew the man, swore his name was Wallace, and that his ghost still walks the yard at night, muttering train schedules under his breath. You tell yourself it's just myth, but you run anyway. After what feels like an hour, though it's probably closer to 15 minutes, you find a fallen log and collapse behind it, heart hammering, lungs burning. You press your cheek against the cold bark, listening. The shouting has faded, just the wind now, just your own breath. You're alone. You stay there shivering until the sky goes dark. Eventually, you crawl out from behind the log and start walking, no direction, just away. You don't cry, not because you're strong, but because there's no room for it. Crying takes energy, and right now every calorie in your body is needed just to keep your blood from freezing. Your coat hangs heavy on your shoulders, the newspaper insulation crushed and damp. You lost your tin cup in the scramble, maybe your knife too. Your bindle's still with you. Barely. The strap is frayed where it's snagged on a bush. You're one good fall away from losing everything. You walk for miles, guided only by instinct and the thin ribbon of stars overhead. You pass fields, a quiet road, and finally a stretch of empty track. That's when you hear it. The low, rhythmic moan of a train in the distance. You wait. Watch. Freight train slides into view slower than most. You crouch near the edge of the railbed, heart thudding until it passes, and then you run. This time you don't go for the blind baggage. You can't. Not in your condition. Instead, you grab the ladder of an open boxcar, stumble once, then haul yourself up with a grunt that comes from somewhere deeper than your lungs. You collapse inside, the wooden floor slapping your shoulder, and lie there panting. The car is mostly empty, just a few crates shoved to one side and a tarp-covered pile in the corner. You crawl toward it, slow, and yank the tarp back. Underneath, a man, asleep, maybe. Then he blinks, squints at you, and exhales sharply. Jesus, you look like you've been through the fire. Bulls, you manage to say. He nods, no further explanation needed. He shifts over, makes room. You sit beside him in silence for a while. The boxcar groans as it takes a turn. The wooden slats leak cold air, but it's nothing compared to the night outside. Eventually he passes you a flask. You take a sip, cheap whiskey, enough to burn a line down your throat and warm your gut. It's almost worth the coughing fit that follows. Name's Merle, he says, tapping his chest. You give him yours, or at least the one you're using this month. He doesn't question it. Merle's been riding since 29. It says he's seen every rail from Portland to Birmingham. Tells you the bulls are getting worse. Used to be they'd give you a warning. Now it's all blood and barking. He shows you a scar across his scalp. Cinder block. Straight to the head. Woke up 2 days later under a grain car. There's a theory he shares between swigs from the flask, that some towns aren't just anti-hobo. They're part of a quiet, organised effort to wipe the camps out completely. Not just sweep them, but erase them. Put the fear into riders. He says it like a man who believes it absolutely. Fringe stuff. But out here, fringe and fact blur fast. Some historians argue that towns, especially during the Depression, used extra-legal means to clear hobos. They organised vigilance committees, deputised civilians, and even paid local teens to harass riders. The record's fuzzy. Most newspapers didn't print the dirty work. But too many old-timers have similar stories for it to be coincidence. You're not a scholar. You just know you've got bruises forming on your ribs and a lucky streak that didn't run out tonight. You and Merle ride in silence after that. He offers part of a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. You chew it slowly, your jaw sore from clenching in the cold. Outside, the wind hums through the cracks. The stars wheel overhead. The train doesn't care where you're going. It just moves forward. You lie back, pulling your coat tighter. Your head rests against your bindle like a pillow full of secrets. Merle starts to hum something, an old song. No words. Just a tune that sounds like smoke and long nights. You let it wash over you, and for the first time since the raid, your shoulders drop. Just a little. The bulls will be back. The cold will come again, and the train will stop eventually. But not yet. You don't wake up so much as regain awareness. The boxcar never stopped moving, not that you noticed. It's morning now, maybe. Maybe not. The light sneaking through the slats is pale and watery, the kind that says winter's just flexing its fingers before making a fist. Your body's locked in place from cold and stiffness. Every muscle feels like it belongs to someone else. A much older someone. Merle's gone. You blink, confused at first, then spot the empty wax paper folded neatly near the wall where he'd been sitting. No note. No sign of where he went. That's how it goes. People drift in, drift out. It's not personal, it's survival. You sit up slowly, popping joints like a human percussion section. The floor under you vibrates with the hum of the rails, and you crawl toward the edge of the car to peek out through a knothole in the wood. Pine trees, hills, low-covered fields, somewhere rural, somewhere colder than hell. The kind of nowhere place that doesn't even get a name on the map. You sigh, rub your face with hands that still sting from the cold, and lean back. You need sleep. Real sleep, but sleep out here isn't restful. It's measured in 10-minute bursts, curled around your pack, one eye open and one foot ready to run. And always in the back of your mind is the quiet certainty that someone might take your coat, your boots, or worse, your life, just to get one more night closer to spring. That's when you start learning the art of sleeping with one eye open. It's not just paranoia, it's policy. Ask any rail rider who's lasted more than a season and they'll tell you, trust gets you killed faster than frostbite. You can share a meal, a fire, even a song, but never your guard. Not fully. Your first lesson in this came weeks ago, long before you met Stitch, long before you knew about grease as insulation, or that paper could save your life. You were still green then, still smiling at strangers like that wouldn't bite you later. Back outside Des Moines, you found a two-man camp under an overpass, a small fire, a shared blanket, and two guys who looked ragged but friendly. You sat for a while, swapped stories. One of them gave you a crust of bread, said his name was Dobbs. The other guy barely spoke. You fell asleep next to that fire, just for a moment. That's all it takes. When you woke up, your boots were gone. So was your bindle. You tied it to your wrist. Clever, you thought. But Dobbs had a knife, cut the rope while you slept. You only noticed because the cold woke you up after your feet started to seize. You walked barefoot into town the next morning, bleeding on gravel, cursing everyone and everything, including yourself. Now you don't sleep unless your back's against a wall and your boots are inside your coat with you. You loop your arms through the straps of your pack. You wedge a rusted can under your elbow, not for protection, but because if someone tries to move your arm, it'll clatter loud enough to jolt you awake. It's not comfortable, it's not safe, but it's the only way to make it to morning. You've heard stories from the older riders, tales of clever setups. One guy sleeps with a railroad spike tied to his wrist, dangling from a string. If someone pulls his coat, the spike hits the floor. Another guy, they say, trained himself to sleep in 10-minute intervals, setting a mental timer that wakes him just long enough to scan the room before nodding back off. The fringe rumours are even wilder. There's talk of a man named Whisper Jack who never sleeps at all, claims he learned to meditate with his eyes open. Some say he's part machine. Others say he went mad after spending a winter locked in a boxcar in Utah, surviving only on stolen sardines and melted snow. Whatever the truth, the point is clear, sleep is dangerous, and not sleeping is worse. You manage a few minutes of it here, curled in the corner of the boxcar as it rocks side to side. The train groans like it's carrying the weight of 100,000 regrets. You drift off for maybe 5 minutes, long enough for your neck to kink, long enough to start dreaming about home, then jolt awake when the car shifts suddenly. Outside, the wind's picked up. Snow swirls through the cracks. You sit up, brush ice from your sleeves and recheck your things. Bindle, still here. Spoon in your pocket. Boots, laced tight and stuffed with newspaper. You wrap your arms tighter and rest your head back against the wall. A noise catches your attention. Movement. You're not alone. In the opposite corner of the boxcar, half hidden under a tarp, there's someone else. They hadn't stirred until now, maybe asleep, maybe just laying low. You sit still, watching. Eventually a head lifts. A man, maybe mid-30s, with deep lines across his forehead and one eye half swollen shut. He nods once. No words. That's the dance. Mutual acknowledgement without invitation. You nod back. He doesn't move closer and neither do you. That's the agreement. Two strangers in a boxcar, sharing space, sharing cold, not trust. You notice he's got a blanket wrapped around him like armour, and a tin of sardines clutched in one hand. His coat is patched with duct tape, and he's got a knit cap pulled low over his ears. You close your eyes again, but not all the way. Just enough to look like you're resting. You keep your ears open for any sudden shift, any footstep, any change in his breathing. You don't hate him. You don't fear him exactly, but you don't let him in, not until you've watched him breathe through at least 3 exhalations without flinching. Later, when the train slows, you prepare to jump. So does he. "You headed south?" he asks, voice rough like gravel and whiskey. You shrug. "Where it's warmer." He gives a quiet laugh. "Aren't we all?" And then you both leap. You landed in a shallow ditch, snow puffing up around your boots. You roll, stand, and watch him disappear into the trees without another word. You'll never see him again. Out here, people don't stay long, but the memory of them does. You carry them like shadows inside your coat. The man with the sardines, Dobbs and his knife, Whisper Jack with the machine heart, all of them part of the night you learn to sleep with one eye open. You sling your bindle over your shoulder, tighten your coat and start walking toward the edge of another anonymous town. Already scanning for signs. Safe place, dangerous bull, kind lady, fresh water. You don't know where you'll sleep tonight. But you know exactly how you'll do it. Cramped, cranky, crinkling with every breath, and always listening. You don't know exactly where the town is, but you know you're getting close. It's in the little things, the way the snow's thinner on the road, how the trees start to thin out and the telephone wires reappear like stitched scars across the sky. You pass a barn leaning like a drunk against a fence, and behind it, someone's laundry flapping in the wind. Pants, a sheet, a pair of socks stiff with cold. Civilization. Or something pretending to be it. The real giveaway is the church, small white, steeple cracked down the middle like it took a lightning bolt personally, but the bell's still hanging and the front steps are shoveled. People still use it. That's promising, maybe dangerous. You approach slow, boots crunching ice, your coat rustling with that now familiar whisper of newspaper armour. You walk past without stopping, head down, eyes scanning for Hobo Code on posts, fences, gate stones. And there it is, a half circle carved into the bottom of a signpost. Open at the top. It means charity given here. Not a guarantee, but better than most things. You slow your pace, angle off the road, and drift toward a side alley that runs behind a row of modest homes. The windows glow warm. You smell something, meat maybe. Could be stew, could be your imagination setting traps. Another mark. This one scratched into a fence, a cat symbol. It means a kind woman lives here. Could be a meal, could be a blanket. You pause, second guessing. It's late, but not dark yet. Towns like this can turn quick, but your stomach's louder than your nerves. You knock. The door creaks open halfway, and a woman, maybe in her 50s, peers out. She looks at you like someone trying to decide whether you're a person or a problem. You keep your hands visible, your posture soft. Evening, you say, just passing through. I heard this house was kind. She eyes your coat, your frostbitten face, your shoes held together with twine. Stay there. She shuts the door, and for a second you think that's it, but then it opens again, and she steps out with a tin cup in one hand and a folded cloth bundle in the other. Soup, she says, and this blanket belonged to my husband. He don't need it now. You thank her, genuinely. Not just because you're cold and starving, but because she didn't have to do anything. People have lost their houses for less. And still, she came outside. She doesn't ask your name, doesn't ask where you're from, just gives a quiet God be with you before stepping back inside and closing the door. You don't linger. You take your soup, thick, hot, spiced with something that makes your throat ache with gratitude, and disappear back into the alley. You find a spot behind an abandoned garage to sit and eat. The cup burns your fingers through the metal, but you hold it like it's gold. You drink slowly, trying not to cry. You fail, just a little, not because of the cold or hunger or fear, but because someone saw you and didn't flinch. This kind of kindness, it's rare. Not impossible, just rare. Historians always paint the Depression like a landscape of desperation, which it was, but it was also full of small mercies like this. People who didn't have much, but gave anyway. A woman in Kansas City who made soup every Saturday for any man who knocked. A pastor in Ohio who left a bucket of hot water on his back porch every morning with a bar of soap beside it. A family in Vermont who fed every rider that came through, so long as they chopped wood in exchange. One fringe tale tells of an entire block in Boise, where every house took turns sheltering hobos during the winter. No proof, of course, no names. Just a symbol, a double cat scratched on a tree near the edge of town that some riders say marked it as a holy row. Nobody's sure if it really existed, but you hope it did. You wrap yourself in the blanket she gave you, blue plaid, fraying at the edges, smelling faintly of cedar. It's heavy in the way a good blanket should be. Like protection, like dignity. You imagine her husband in it, sitting in a chair by a fire, reading a paper. Then you imagine him gone, and her, alone in that house, giving his warmth to someone she didn't know. You curl up behind the garage, belly warm, limbs still sore but no longer frozen stiff. You know better than to sleep now. It's not the cold that'll get you this close to a town, it's the local boys with nothing better to do, the ones who think it's funny to rough up rail trash for sport. They carry baseball bats, flashlights and smiles that don't reach their eyes. You saw one last week, just a kid, maybe 16, wearing a sheriff's badge he probably found in a cereal box. He kicked over a campfire in the yard, laughed, whence the flames caught a man's sleeve. Said, "Go on, dance for it." The man did, slapped at the flames with a dead fish look in his eyes. You didn't interfere. You watched from the bushes, jaw clenched. Then you moved on, so you don't sleep. Not yet. Instead, you settle into the blanket and wait out the hours, watching the stars poke through the dark sky one by one. You hum something under your breath, something from when you were younger, before all this, before the rails. You try not to think about the woman inside the house, sipping tea, unaware, or maybe fully aware, of what her simple gift meant. You know this can't last. You'll have to move again soon. The bulls might not be here tonight, but they'll be back. Someone always tells. The longer you stay in one place, the higher the chance you get noticed. Then the welcome dries up. The doors close and the soup turns to silence. So you make a note, not with pencil and paper, you don't carry either, but in your mind. You remember the fence, the mark, the smell of the soup, and when the time comes, you'll scratch the cat sign nearby, maybe add a dot underneath. Kind woman, generous, safe for a night. You'll pay the kindness forward in the only way that works out here, in code. Tomorrow you'll leave before sunup, slip through the edge of town, catch the next slow freight headed south. But tonight, you're fed, you're blanketed, you're not alone. And for the first time in weeks, when you close your eyes, you actually let them stay closed for a while. You wake up stiff and groggy, but not frozen. And out here, that's a victory. Your breath clouds in the pre-dawn light, curling up into the sky, like smoke signals nobody's going to read. The blanket's still wrapped around your shoulders, and for a second, just a second, you pretend you're waking up in a real bed. You imagine flannel sheets, a room that smells like coffee and floor polish, something like peace. Then your stomach growls and the illusion breaks like thin ice under a careless foot. You rise slowly, groaning like a century-old tree, and shake the frost from your coat. The blanket gets folded neatly and tucked under your arm. You don't know why, it's not like she'll see it again. But something about leaving it tidy feels right. Some echo of the manners someone taught you, back before manners got replaced with survival hacks and silent nods in boxcars. You slip through the edge of town just as the sky starts to change, black fading to blue, the stars packing up for the day. You pass the church again, its steeple standing crooked like a tired sentinel. There's a faint smell of smoke in the air, maybe someone's hearth warming up for the morning. You duck down side streets and alleyways, not because anyone's hazing you, but because you know better than to give them the chance. You spot the tracks gleaming faintly in the light, and you know your next ride isn't far. You find a flat car sitting dead at the edge of the yard, probably waiting to get hooked up later. No engine, no noise, but near the brake wheel, a couple of old oil drums have been stacked like someone's makeshift shelter. You check inside, empty but warm, sheltered from the wind. This is where you prep for the day's ride. You pull off your boots, slow, wincing, revealing damp socks and bruised toes. Not black yet, but getting there. You peel them off and wring them out, the cold water dripping onto the gravel. You've learned to carry at least one backup pair in your bindle, stuffed deep into the pocket of an old coat sleeve. They are mismatched, one blue, one grey, but they're dry. You slip them on with care, like dressing a wound, then fish out your secret weapon, axle grease. It's in a tiny tobacco tin, crusted at the edges, half full and sticky like black molasses. You learned this trick from a guy named Newton back in Sioux Falls, a man with the kind of beard that made him look like a frostbitten Santa. He swore by it, said a thin layer of axle grease around the rim of your boots could seal out wind and water, give you 2 or 3 more hours of warmth. You dip your fingers in and smear the grease around your ankles, then rub it into the cracks in your boots. The smell is horrid, metallic, oily, almost sweet in a way that makes your stomach turn, but the moment you slide your boots back on, you feel it. Insulation. Not comfort, just less pain. That's your new scale these days. Degrees of less suffering. Newspapers go next. Yesterday's pages are too damp, so you pull out fresh ones from your stash, weather section, comics, even a crossword someone already filled in with what might have been the answers or just random swears. You stuff the sheets inside your coat, behind your shirt, down your sleeves. Padding, windproofing, armour. Then you do the final ritual, the fire trick. You don't have a full fire barrel, not here, but tucked inside one of the drums is a small collection of half-burnt twigs and wax paper. Enough to make a tiny fire, just long enough to heat a can of beans, if you had beans. You don't, but you do have a tin of old lard and a torn-up bootlace. You pull out a flattened soup can from your pack, set the lard inside, and coil the bootlace like a wick. When you light it, carefully, hands cupped against the wind, it catches with a low greasy flame. You hold your hands over it, palms blackened by the soot. It's barely more than a candle, but the heat that rises off it feels like sunlight. You close your eyes for a moment, soaking it in. They used to do this in the old days, you're told. Back in World War I trenches, burned lard in cans to warm rations and hands. Friction fires and grease pots, nothing new under the sun, even suffering recycles itself. You hear a train whistle in the distance. Time to move. You pack up quickly. The can is cooled and stashed again. You don't waste lard, not out here. You sling your bindle back over your shoulder, boots thudding against the frozen ground, and move toward the line. The yard's mostly empty, no bulls in sight. You creep low beside the cars until you find one with an open door. A boxcar stacked with crates, just enough space between them to wedge yourself inside. You climb up, haul yourself in, and slide between the crates. It's dark, dusty, but dry. You settle in, your breath loud in the silence. You wrap your coat tighter, the newspaper inside rustling like brittle leaves. The axle grease is already doing its job. You can feel your toes for now. Fringe fact, some riders use bacon grease when they couldn't get axle lube. Others use melted candles. One old-timer you met swore he rubbed bear fat into his boots every winter. Said it made him invisible to frost. Maybe it was true. Maybe he just liked smelling like wilderness. Either way, you're learning. Every day another trick, another half-inch between you and the cold. Historians rarely write about things like this. The little rituals, the daily hacks. They write about train schedules, labour unions, unemployment lines, but not how a man can spend 15 minutes layering a coat with obituaries and grease his boots with engine oil just to survive a ride between two towns no one cares about. But that's the real history. The wind howls through the cracks in the boxcar as the train lurches forward. You brace yourself, one hand clutching the side of a crate, the other still smudged with grease. Outside, the sky has gone pale and bitter. You can already feel the air shifting colder, sharper. Another storm, maybe. But for now, you've got your layers, your lard fire, your newspaper armour, and a ride heading south. That's all you need. You find the can of beans under the crate by accident. You're shifting your weight, trying to stretch your legs without knocking over the stack of boxes you've wedged yourself between, when your boot kicks something metal. It rolls, softly thudding against the wooden floor, and you reach down instinctively, half expecting it to be a rock or some chunk of train debris. But when your fingers wrap around that familiar cold cylinder, your heart does this little stutter of joy that makes you feel slightly insane. It's food. Real food. Not a crust, not a handful of dried corn someone dropped by mistake, a whole can. The label's half torn and unreadable, but you shake it and hear the dull slosh of beans, or something bean-adjacent, inside. You smile for the first time in what feels like weeks. You hold it in your lap like it's a small animal. No can opener, but that's never stopped you before. You pull out your pocket knife, one of the few items you've managed not to lose, and jab it carefully into the top, working it around the rim, peeling back the lid with steady pressure. You've done this enough times to know when to stop, just before it's jagged enough to slice your lip open. You bend the metal back with your thumb, pry it open. Cold beans, brown and gelatinous, clinging to each other like survivors in a shipwreck. They're perfect. You dig in with your spoon, still the one Stitch gave you back in the jungle. Bent now, the edge dull from scraping too many cans, but it works. You eat slowly, methodically, trying not to rush. Every bite is the same, room temperature, starchy, slightly metallic. But you treat each mouthful like a sacred thing. This is sustenance. This is currency. Out here, a single can of beans is survival in its purest form. Back in town, before everything collapsed, this kind of food was the cheap stuff. Pantry filler. The thing you ate when there was nothing else. When payday was still 2 days out and the fridge held only regret. But on the rails, it's gold. You've seen men trade their last cigarette for a dented can of black-eyed peas. You've seen others start fights over a half-eaten can of stew. Once you even saw a guy knock his tooth out on a frozen can because he didn't know to thaw it first. The can split his lip wide open, but he still ate the beans. That's the level of hunger you don't understand until you're in it. You eat half, then stop. You force yourself to close the lid as best you can, wrap the can in your sock and wedge it into the side of your pack. You'll save the rest for tonight. Something to look forward to. That kind of planning is a luxury, and you're not about to waste it. There's an unspoken rule among hobos. Never eat your entire meal at once, no matter how hungry you are, because you don't know what tomorrow looks like. Could be warm, could be 20 below, could be stuck under a bridge with a broken ankle and no one around for miles. That half can of beans might be the only thing standing between you and the end of your story. You settle back in the corner of the boxcar, bean grease still on your lips, and close your eyes. Not to sleep, just to rest, just up to feel what it's like to be full, or at least not empty. The train rattles along, bumping over frost-heaved track. the wind slipping through the cracks in soft howls. You hear the soft squeal of the wheels rounding a bend, the distant honk of a crossing warning. You imagine fields rolling by outside, bare trees like skeletons, farmhouses hunched against the wind, all of it sliding past like you're watching it from a dream. Somewhere in the back of your mind you remember an old tale, the legend of the sacred can of beans. You first heard it in a camp outside St. Paul, shared by a man called Lucky Tom and Lucky Tom. He claimed there was a single can, one can, that had been passed from rider to rider for over a decade, never opened, never soiled. The label was long gone, and no one knew what was inside, but everyone treated it with reverence. It was said to bring luck, as long as you didn't eat it. The moment someone cracked it open, the charm would break. Tom said he saw it once in 34, wrapped in a piece of red cloth and tucked into a hobo's coat like a holy relic. That man disappeared not long after. Some say he got rich, others say he got dead, but no one ever saw the can again. You don't believe the story, not really, but it says something about the life out here, that even food becomes myth when it's rare enough, that the humble bean can, bent and anonymous, becomes a symbol of something bigger. Hope, maybe, or just the possibility of a future meal. Scholars might argue about this stuff, the hobo diet, the nutritional dangers, the risk of botulism in old canned goods. Some say the average hobo diet was barely enough to survive, let alone thrive. Others claim they learned to make do through scavenging and shared knowledge. But no one's debating how sacred a hot meal becomes when you're living meal to meal, hoping your spoon doesn't rust through before spring. You're still thinking about that as the train slows. You peek through a slat in the door. Trees again, a road crossing, a sign flashing by too fast to read. Then the train groans to a near stop, the wheels hissing and clanking, as if even they're tired. You figure it's time to get off. You don't know the name of this place, but you'll figure it out. You always do. You slip the bean can deeper into your bindle, double knot the strap, and brace yourself for the jump. The wind's sharp as razors when you slide the door open. You hop down, stumble in the gravel, and catch yourself before you fall. Then you start walking. Another town, another day, another series of maybes. But this time your pack is heavier with food. You walk a little straighter. For now, you've got half a can of beans. That makes you the richest hobo on the line. You don't expect anyone to help you. That's just the way the rails raise you. But when the sleet starts falling, cold, sloppy, sideways, and the wind picks up so fast it nearly shoves you into the ditch beside the road, you realize that if you don't find shelter soon, you are going to collapse like wet paper. The snow isn't the soft, pretty kind, it's angry snow, knife-edged and mean, slapping your face with every gust like it's taking something personal out on you. You try to keep walking, try to keep your head down and your coat tight, but the layers aren't enough today. Not even with the newspaper, not even with the grease still clinging to the seams of your boots. Your body goes stiff, your hands too clumsy to keep in your pockets, your fingertips start going numb. That's not new, but it's worse than usual, and that familiar whisper of fear creeps up your spine. You're not going to make it this time. Then, like it was dropped there just for you, you spot the shed. It's a squat little thing, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, huddled at the edge of a switching yard on the outskirts of town. No lock on the door, no lights inside, just a splintered rectangle of wood with a half-rotted roof and a leaning chimney sticking out like a broken finger. A maintenance shack, maybe, or something older. You approach it slowly, half expecting to be shouted at or shot at, but it's empty, quiet. The door creaks open without resistance. Inside it's musty, dust and oil and old smoke. The walls are lined with forgotten tools, wrenches the size of your forearm, a rusted lantern hanging from a bent nail. There's a workbench pushed against the back wall, and a coal stove in the corner, black with soot and surrounded by a pile of wood scraps. You close the door behind you and feel, for the first time all day, like you're not losing the fight. You move fast, not because you have energy, but because if you don't, your fingers might stop working entirely. You strip off your wet gloves and dig through your pack, pulling out the scraps of newspaper you hadn't used for insulation yet. You ball them up, shove them into the stove's belly, then pile on kindling. There's no lighter, but you've got a few matches, carefully rationed, sacred things. You strike one and nearly drop it from shaking hands. The second catches. The paper flares, the kindling crackles, and within minutes flames bloom in the iron belly of the stove like some ancient magic. You fall back onto the floor, winded, sweating already from the adrenaline and effort. The heat rises in slow pulses. warming the air like breath. You hold your hands over the stove, rotating them inch by inch until the feeling starts to crawl back into your skin like ants. It hurts. Of course it hurts. That's how you know it's working. Then the door creaks again. You jerk upright, one hand already reaching for your knife, the other clutching your pack. But it's not a bull, not even a stranger. It's a railroad worker, middle-aged, wool-cap, oil-stained overalls. He pauses in the doorway, squinting through the smoke curling up from the stove. "Well, damn," he mutters. "Didn't expect company." You stay frozen, not sure if this is where it all goes wrong. But he just sighs and steps inside, shaking snow off his sleeves. "You riding the line?" You nod, wary. He kicks the door shut behind him, then walks over to the stove and pulls out a tin lunchbox, pops it open, sandwich, apple, thermos. He sits on the bench like this is just Tuesday. "You hungry?" You blink. Then nod again. He passes you half his sandwich, white bread and bologna, already soggy, and unscrews the cap on the thermos. Pours you half a cup of something steaming, coffee. You take it, stunned, not just at the gesture, but at how nonchalantly he does it. Like feeding a hobo in a rail shed during a sleet storm is just part of his job description. "Name's Earl," he says after a while, between bites. "I run switch on the West Line. Been here since 42. You nod again. Still not sure if you should speak, but you manage a thanks. He shrugs. "Can't let a man freeze to death in my damn tool shed. My wife had never let me hear the end of it." Earl tells you about the yard, how they used to have a full crew back in the 30s, before automation started cutting jobs. He talks about the old jungle that used to be near the river, where hobos would gather every fall to wait out the first frost. "Used to be 10-15 of you in a night," he says. "You'd leave your marks, keep the bulls guessing." You listen, the sandwich vanishing bite by bite. The coffee is hot enough to burn your tongue, and you don't care. Then Earl says something that catches your attention. Some of the old-timers called this stove the Boilerman's Hearth. You look at him, confused. "It's an old name," he explains. "Back before I got here, they say there was a switchman, old guy, worked in this shed through the winters, used to let riders in when the weather got bad. Said it wasn't Christian to let a man die in the snow, kept a logbook even, names, dates, what he gave them. Coffee, matches, spare gloves. He called it the guest registry." Earl walks to the workbench and pulls open a drawer. After a few seconds of rummaging, he pulls out a little book. Leather-bound, pages yellow, cover cracked like dried skin. He hands it to you. Inside are names, dates, messages. Tommy H. Deck 5, 1935. Save my fingers tonight. God bless. Mary from Duluth. Jan in 42. First fire in 3 weeks. Elmer and Jake. Deck 1960. Left a can of soup in return. Ride safe. You flip through in awe. Some pages are just fingerprints, smudged and greasy from soot and frostbitten hands. Others are careful, handwritten lines of gratitude. It's like finding a family tree of the forgotten. And now you're part of it. You look up at Earl, who's watching you with a quiet smile. "Add your name," he says, "if you've got a pencil." You do, just a stub. You sign the bottom of the last page, your hands still shaking a little from the cold. You don't add anything poetic. Just your name, the date, and 2 words. Still here. Earl nods. Good enough. He finishes his coffee, stands, and pulls on his gloves. "I'm due back in the yard. You stay as long as you need. Just close the door when you go. And if anyone asks how you got in here, I ain't seen you." Then he's gone. You sit in the warm silence, the stove breathing steadily in the corner. You pick up the guest book again and reread the names, fingers tracing the ink. There's a debate among railroad historians whether stories like Earl's, like the Boilerman's Hearth, were real or just railside myths passed along like fairy tales. Most say the evidence is spotty, just anecdotes, rumours, no hard records, but the warmth in the stove is real, and so is the name you just added to the book. You wake up to the sound of sleet ticking against the roof like fingernails on a drum. The stove's gone cold, but the air inside the shed still carries the ghost of warmth. Your breath curls in lazy puffs as you sit up, joints popping, back sore from sleeping half-curled on the hard floor. The blanket's wrapped around your shoulders, stiff with dried sweat and soot, but still doing its job. You blink in the dim grey light bleeding through the cracks in the wall. wondering briefly if Earl had been real or just a fever dream summoned from the edge of the frostbite. You check your bindle. The can of beans is still tucked inside, its tin side cold against your palm. The stub of pencil you used last night to sign the guest book is now wedged into the corner of your sock like some tiny talisman. You feel strange, grimy and hungry, sure, but also tethered to something you didn't know you were missing. Belonging, maybe, or the idea of it. It's funny, the kinds of things that feel sacred out here. You think about the guest book, and the old boilerman who kept it. About how a man no one remembers left behind something that still warms strangers. No statue, no obituary, just a stove in a shed and a battered notebook full of names that otherwise wouldn't exist anywhere at all. And then, as you're rolling up your blanket and packing your things, you remember a story Stitch once told you, half joking, half whispered. A fireside tale for the coldest nights, about the Hobo Saint. Nobody knows his real name. Some say he rode the rails back when they first hammered them down, steam engine era. Others swear he didn't show up until the Dust Bowl, appearing in the dead of winter with a patchy coat and a wide grin, handing out apples like a magician. The myth shifts depending on who's telling it, but the core stays the same. The Hobo Saint only appears when the cold gets unbearable. When frost eats the firewood, when the wind stops pretending to be a joke. He walks into camp with bare hands and no pack, sings a song nobody knows, and suddenly people feel warmer. Not fire warm, but deep, marrow-level heat. Like remembering a mother's hug or the first time you had soup with bread on the side. They say he leaves before dawn, never takes anything, and the next morning, someone always finds a fresh pair of socks or a full can of stew where the saint had been sitting. The story's pure nonsense, obviously. No one sings strangers warm. But still, last night you ate, you drank hot coffee, and you didn't die of cold, and this morning your socks are still dry. That's more than most mornings give you. You sling your bindle over your shoulder and open the door. The wind greets you like a slap, not as bad as yesterday, but still mean. The sleets become a fine frozen mist that clings to everything. It soaks into your coat within minutes, makes the paper insulation in your sleeves sad like wet tissue. You head toward the tracks. The yard is alive this morning, workers moving, trains hissing, couplers clanking. You hang back in the shadows, watching. You spot Earl on the far end, talking to someone in a conductor's cap. He doesn't look your way, but you don't expect him to. That was part of the deal. Eventually, you catch a break, a freight idling near the edge of the yard, mostly grain cars and flatbeds, but one boxcar with the door cracked just enough to slip inside. You wait, time it, no bulls in sight. You dart across the gravel, boots scraping, heart thudding, and haul yourself up. Inside, it's dark and empty. You wedge yourself into the corner, legs folded, arms tucked tight. You wait. After a few minutes, the train groans, shifts, and begins to roll. The boxcar smells of hay and old grain. Better than oil or wet wood, that's for sure. You try to settle, but your mind keeps drifting back to the story of the saint. You wonder where it started. Probably with someone like Stitch, spinning tales to keep spirits up around a fire. Maybe it was born from the same root as the old train ghost legends, like the conductor who never sleeps or the phantom brakeman of Toledo. Fringe tales, all of them, still appear. There's always someone who swears it happened to them. In one jungle, you met a man who claimed the Hobo Saint once walked right into a camp outside Amarillo, handed him a cup of hot soup, then vanished. Said he was barefoot. Said the soup tasted like cinnamon and forgiveness. Of course, he was high on turpentine fumes at the time, so maybe not the best source. And yet, you reach into your pack and pull out the half can of beans from 2 days ago. Still sealed tight under the lid, you bent back down. You consider saving it, then you consider the pain in your stomach. The train ride could last a day, could last 3 miles. You have no way of knowing. You open it. Cold, congealed. Still the best thing you'll eat this week. Halfway through, you think about the saint again. You wonder if you'd recognize him if you saw him. Would he look like Merle, the guy from the boxcar a few nights ago? Like Earl, with his thermos and tired eyes? Like Stitch, with her bent spoon and old coat? Maybe it's not one person. Maybe it's whoever steps in when they don't have to. You eat the last bite and wipe the spoon clean on your sleeve. You keep it in your coat pocket, like always. The train speeds up. Hours pass. The cold creeps in. You shift positions. Your fingers go numb again. You wonder how far south you'll have to go before you stop seeing your breath. Before the snow becomes mud and mud becomes dust and you forget what it felt like to be frozen from the inside out. You hum a tune. You don't know where it comes from. Some melody lodged in your head from childhood. Or maybe something you picked up in a campfire sing-along back in Nebraska. It's low, tuneless, half wrong. But you hum it anyway, for the rhythm, for the noise, for something to fill the space, and for one strange, fleeting moment you do feel warmer. Not your skin, exactly, not your fingers or your toes. Just something inside you. Something small. Quiet. You smile, even if it's dumb. Outside, the wind howls across the rails, and somewhere you swear you hear a second voice join in your tune. You wake up to the smell of rope. Not new rope, the sharp, clean kind you find in a hardware store, but the old kind, damp, musty, fraying at the edges, and sour with sweat and time. You're not sure how long you were asleep, an hour, maybe 2. The boxcar is still moving, though slower now, bumping along with a rhythm that tells you you're nearing a yard or a junction. You blink the sleep from your eyes and stretch slowly, busting. Careful not to knock over your pack or slam your head into the crates stacked beside you. The rope smell gets stronger. You shift to the side, and that's when you see it. Half covered under a tattered tarp in the far corner of the car is a coiled length of heavy rope, looped in perfect circles like a snake curled in hibernation. Next to it sits a bucket, an old wooden crate filled with rusted tools, and something that looks suspiciously like a broken saddle. Whoever used this boxcar last wasn't hauling grain or coal. They were hauling gear. For work, maybe, or something stranger. You crawl over and lift the edge of the tarp. The rope is thick, ship-grade stuff. Coarse. You run your fingers along the strands, feeling the splinters prick your skin. The bucket is filled with nails, bent horseshoes, and something that looks like a pulley system. You look around again and realize you've stumbled into one of the strangest makeshift workshops you've ever seen. And then you see the knots. Tied into the rope are dozens of them, every few inches, a different pattern. Some you recognize, square knot, figure 8, clove hitch. Others are more intricate, clearly made with intention and care. You count them. 17 knots in total, each one a different shape. A different size, tight and perfect, like little sculptures carved from twine. You sit back on your heels and stare. You've met a lot of hobos, a lot of drifters. Some could carve wooden spoons from scrap pine. Others played the harmonica like they'd been born with it in their mouth. One guy you met near Flagstaff painted murals on boxcars. A whole dreamscapes with charcoal and leftover paint. Everyone has a thing, a skill, a survival quirk. This guy? Knots! You pick up the rope, heavy in your lap, and start trying to undo one of the knots. It takes time. The fibers are stiff, the structure precise. But eventually, it comes loose in your hands. You smile. There's something weirdly satisfying about it. A puzzle you can hold. You retie it, slower this time, mimicking the pattern. Your fingers fumble at first, cold, clumsy, but soon they remember. Loop, pull, tuck, you keep going. It passes the time, one knot, then another. Your breath fogs in the air with every exhale, but your hands stay busy, and that makes it easier to ignore the cold. You remember a man named Hal you met in a Montana jungle last winter. Called himself Rope Hal. Wore a belt made of paracord and swore every knot he tied was a prayer. Said he learned from sailors, or maybe monks, or maybe just made it up as he went. He taught you a few knots, mostly practical ones for tying down tarps or keeping your bindle from coming apart peditos. But one night after the fire had burned low and the wind was creeping in, he showed you something different. A good knot, he said, is like a secret. Tight, useful, and it holds up under pressure. He tied something intricate and handed it to you. Now untie it. You tried. It took you 20 minutes. He smiled the whole time. It wasn't just about the knot. It was the focus. The way it pulled your mind out of the cold and the hunger and the long, hollow ache of loneliness. It made your hands remember what they could still do. That's something out here. That's survival. You're tying another when the train suddenly lurches, the car rocks hard and you lose your balance, sliding across the wooden floor and landing on your side. You groan, roll over, and feel something pop in your shoulder. Nothing serious, just stiff. You sit up, check your pack, then glance outside through a crack in the door. Snow, again. The world outside is white and grey and blurry with flurries. The train's slowing, the brakes hissing like a tired dragon. You gather your things quickly, sling the rope over your shoulder, it's too interesting to leave behind, and prepare to jump. You leap into a bank of snow that swallows your knees. Cold shoots up your legs, but you push forward, moving quickly away from the tracks before anyone sees you. You're in the middle of nowhere again. No signs, no houses, just trees and a dirt road half covered in slush. You keep walking. Eventually you find a dry patch under a thick spruce and settle down. You dig into your coat, pull out the rope, and start again. This time you try to replicate one of the more complex knots, the kind you saw wrapped around that pulley. It takes longer. Your fingers move slowly, slipping a little, but eventually the pattern comes together. You sit there in the snow, wrapped in a coat stiff with newsprint and axle grease, tying rope like it means something. And maybe it does. There's a fringe story told in the jungles about a man called Not Johnny. Said he travelled the country with a single rope and never slept indoors, lived under the stars, even in winter. People claimed he could tie knots strong enough to hold back the wind, that he'd wrap his tarp in a pattern so perfect snow would slide right off like water on oilskin. Some said he could tie warmth into the rope itself. Others said he just liked fidgeting. No one knows what happened to him, but some believe he left knots hanging in trees near the camps he passed through, little messages only the observant could find, a kind of secret code. You wonder now if this rope is his, if the boxcar you rode in was one of his caches, a mobile hideout disguised as cargo. Probably nonsense, but it's a good thought, and the rope feels real in your hands. Practical fact, knots are useful. You can build a shelter with the right ones. Hang food away from raccoons. Tie your boots when the laces snap. Keep your coat shut when the buttons fall off. Out here, knowledge isn't just power, it's insulation. You finish one last knot, a tidy bowline, and stare at it for a moment before hanging the rope on a low branch nearby. Maybe someone else will find it. Maybe they'll tie one of their own. The wind picks up again, cold and steady. You pull your coat tighter, adjust your scarf and rise. Your hands are sore, but they're warm, and they remember how to do things. That's worth something. The blizzard doesn't announce itself with a roar. It just happens. One moment the snow's light and lazy, swirling gently around your boots as you trudge along a path barely worthy of the name, and the next, the sky drops its entire frozen soul on top of you. No build-up, no warning, just white, everywhere, immediate and blinding. You blink once, twice, and suddenly you can't see 10 feet in any direction. It's like waking up inside a snow globe being shaken by a vindictive child. You curse under your breath, pull your coat tighter, and drop your head against the wind. It's coming from the north, biting at your face, driving icy needles through the seams in your sleeves. You try to stay calm. Panic wastes energy, and you'll need every calorie you've got just to keep your blood from sludging in your veins. But the fear starts to creep in anyway. The snow piles quick, gathering on your shoulders. Your hat, your eyebrows, your boots punch through drifts and hit frozen ground like bricks, and your legs already feel like they're wrapped in soaked towels. The air smells like iron and cold and the distant memory of coal smoke. You've been caught in a storm before, but this one's different. Angrier, somehow. More personal. Then, through the haze, you see it. A train, not moving, parked. A long line of boxcars stretching like a frozen spine into the white. It's maybe 100 yards away, could be more, could be less. Distances lie in weather like this, but you start toward it, hands half numb and swinging stiff at your sides, hoping one of the doors is open, hoping there's shelter inside. You reach the first car and yank at the ladder, metal so cold it burns. You climb, breathing hard, and tug on the handle of the sliding door. Locked. Of course, you move to the next. Same deal. Then the next, and then, finally, one that's cracked just enough for a fingernail to fit into the seam. You wedge your fingers in, grit your teeth, and pull. It doesn't budge at first. Snow's packed into the rails, frozen solid. You take your pocket knife, chip at the ice, blow warm air into the crack, try again. This time the door groans, resists, then shifts a few inches. You shove your shoulder into it, and with one last desperate heave, it opens wide enough for you to slide in sideways. Inside it's dark, empty, the kind of empty that echoes, but it's dry. You collapse just past the threshold, roll onto your back and stare up at the ceiling. Your chest heaves with effort, each breath stabbing at your ribs. Your fingers won't close properly. You try to take off your gloves, but the fabric's stiff, clinging to your skin like it doesn't want to let go. You finally get them off and shove your hands under your armpits, rocking slightly, waiting for feeling to return. That's when you notice the door behind you has slid shut. No wind, just closed. You sit up quickly, heart pounding. It's pitch black now. You grope for your pack. your fingers fumbling for the matches you keep buried deep in your sock. When you finally get one lit, the flare of sulphur casts dancing shadows on the wooden walls. You exhale a shaky breath. You're not alone. At first, you think it's a pile of rags in the far corner. Then it shifts, moves. A figure. You tense, match, burning dangerously close to your knuckle. The figure stirs again, and then a voice, hoarse and slow, cracks through the silence. "Don't waste that match." You drop it without thinking, and the car plunges back into darkness. For a moment, there's nothing but breath. Yours, the stranger's. Then you hear a flick, and a small flame springs to life. A candle stub, maybe. The flickering glow illuminates the face of an old man. His skin is leathered and cracked, eyes sunken but sharp. He's wrapped in layers, blankets, coats, scarves, more cloth than man. You open your mouth to speak, but he cuts you off with a raised hand. "Storm got you too, huh?" You nod, then realise he probably can't see it. "Yeah," you rasp. He gestures toward the other side of the car. "Plenty of space. Come warm your bones, won't rob you. I don't even got enough strength to rob myself these days." You shuffle over and sit opposite him. The floor is scattered with sawdust and hay, and the warmth from his candle, pathetic as it is, feels like the breath of a dying fire, still sacred. He watches you for a moment, then passes over a chunk of jerky. "I save it for nights like this," he says. You chew it slowly. It tastes like salt and regret, but it's food. "I'm Leo," he adds, voice low. "Used to be a boilerman, real one, not the jungle kind. Union card and everything. Got laid off when they switched to diesels, never stopped riding." You nod. "I'm just passing through." "Aren't we all?" He chuckles, the sound dry and brittle. You sit in silence for a while, both of you huddled in that shared sliver of warmth, listening to the storm claw at the boxcar outside. "There's a trick to surviving nights like this," Leo says after a long pause. "It's not the fire. It's not the food. It's the knots." You blink. "Knots!" He raises a hand, fingers trembling, and shows you the cuff of his coat. There's a rope tied around it, tight layered, intricate. Rope holds in the heat, keeps your blood close to the skin. Tie it right, it's like wearing another coat. I learned from a yardman in Cheyenne back in 47. Saved my life twice. You glance down at your own sleeves, loose, soaked, open to every icy breeze. Leo hands you a short length of rope from his bundle. "Try it." You do. He walks you through it, step by step, voice steadies despite the shaking in his limbs. It's the same knot you tried yesterday, the bowline. Only this time it holds more meaning. It's not just muscle memory, it's protection, it's ritual. When you're done, he nods in approval. That'll buy you 2 degrees. Might be the only 2 you get. The storm rages on, but inside the car, the two of you sit close, wrapped in rope and story, and you trade tales, where you've been, what you've lost, what you still carry. He listens without judgment. You return the favour. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, Leo falls asleep, snoring softly. You stay awake, not because you're scared, but because someone has to keep watch. That's the rule when there are 2. By morning, the storm has stopped, but the cold hasn't. You shake Leo awake gently. He doesn't stir. You try again, harder this time, still nothing. You sit back, and this time the cold feels different. You close your eyes, not to rest, just to remember his face. When you finally slide the boxcar door open again, the morning light blinds you. You step into it anyway. Still here, still tied tight. You carry Leo's rope for 3 towns. It sits in the top of your bindle, coiled neatly and tied with the knot he showed you. The one he said could buy you 2 degrees of warmth. You haven't untied it. You don't plan to. The fibres are stiff with ice and sweat and memory, and the thought of undoing it feels like cutting a thread to something sacred. You don't speak much during those days, not that there's anyone around to speak to, just wind, tracks, the occasional deer print near a creek. The skies stayed grey the whole way, like it hasn't decided yet whether to keep snowing or just lean into permanent dusk. You eat your last half can of beans near a water tower 2 days out from the yard. Cold again, but you don't complain. Not allowed. You find an old hobo sign scratched into the concrete near the base of the tower, a crude drawing of a coffee cup with 3 lines through it. Safe camp, Brotherhood of Cold, you've heard of that term before. Brotherhood of Cold people? Some say it's just a joke, a phrase tossed around like a patch you don't have to sew. Others say it was real. A loose group of riders who survived the 32 freeze together. Men and women who made it through by forming a pact. Share warmth, share food, share silence. Nothing official, no oaths or bloodletting, just a fire, a circle, and a decision not to let the cold win. You never thought much about it. Until now, because that's what you've been doing, whether you knew it or not. Every fire you've sat by, every spoon you've shared, every coat handed off to someone thinner than you, it's all part of something bigger than a warm moment. It's resistance. Slow, shivering resistance. You reach a town with no name on the map. Just a few houses, a post office the size of a storage shed, and a grain elevator looming like a tombstone over the horizon. The rail splits here. One line east, one line south. You don't know which you'll take yet. Depends on the weather, and maybe the company. You find a jungle near the edge of town, not much of one. 3 lean-tos and a burnt-out fire barrel filled with ash and half-melted beer cans. There's a man sitting nearby, bundled in a patchwork of coats and scarves, staring at the smoke like he's waiting for it to say something. You nod when you approach. He doesn't respond. You sit anyway, across from him, and after a minute he pulls a glove off and holds out a roll of jerky. You take it, chew in silence. The meat is tough and tastes faintly of licorice, which is new. You glance at him. That homemade? He shrugs. Traded it off a preacher in Billings. Claimed it was made by angels. I think it's deer or shoe leather. You both chuckle, just enough to prove you're still human. After a while, more people drift into camp. A young man with burns across his cheek. An older woman with 3 dogs and a blanket full of tin pans. No one talks much. Everyone shares. You pass around the rope, not as a gift, but as a story. You tell them about Leo, about the boxcar, the blizzard, the knots. The man with the burns listens the closest. He doesn't ask for the rope, just asks you to show him one. You do. A bowline first, then a square knot. He copies your hands slowly, clumsily. Later, after the fire gets going and everyone's pulled closer to it like moths in dirty coats, someone brings out a harmonica. The notes are raw and out of tune, but it doesn't matter. You sit curled, knees tucked under your coat, the rope in your lap like a snake coiled to strike at frostbite. That night, nobody sleeps alone. There's an unspoken understanding. The fire stays lit, and people sleep in a ring around it, overlapping shoulders, knees touching. You find yourself wedged between the burn-scarred man and one of the dogs, which smells terrible but radiates enough heat to justify the suffering. You wake once around midnight. The fire's low. One of the older men is up, stoking it with branches stripped bare of bark. You sit up, take the rope, and drape it over your knees. You work through the knots again, not for warmth, but for comfort. It's become something else now, a ritual, a way to mark time in this endless season of cold. You think about Leo again. You wonder if he ever rode with someone like you when he was younger. If he passed a rope to someone in a storm 40 years ago. Maybe you're just the next link in a chain. That's what the Brotherhood of Cold really is, you figure. Not a group, a chain, one act at a time, passed forward. In the morning, the woman with the dogs hands you a biscuit she pulled from her coat like a magic trick. It's rock hard but edible. You accept it, bite into it with slow reverence. She nods once and walks off with her pack. The others leave too, one by one, back to the rail, back to the wind. You linger. You carve a sign into the nearest tree, a hobo symbol you've never drawn before. A pair of crossed ropes knotted in the centre. Brotherhood of Cold. Someone will see it. Maybe they'll sit by the fire ring and wait. Maybe they'll know what it means. Maybe they won't, but it's there. You sling your bindle over your shoulder, the rope tucked neatly inside. You walk back to the tracks, the fork waits, east or south. You don't decide right away. Instead, you sit on the rail, feel the cold bite into your thighs, and hum a little. The same tune from that boxcar with Leo. No words, just breath and memory. You hum until your voice trembles. Then you rise and walk toward the sun. You take the southern fork, not because it's warmer, though God knows that's part of it, but because something about the horizon in that direction looks just a little less cruel. The rails shine there, faint and silver under the thinning snow, stretching out like they might lead to a place where your breath doesn't fog every time you speak. That's the thing about heading south. It doesn't promise comfort, but it offers a different kind of pain. And that's enough. The ride is slow. The freights and mix consist. Lumber. Livestock is grainer. You find a spot wedged between 2 bales of hay in an open car. Pull your coat tight and let the rhythm of the train lull you into something close to rest. You dream strange things, fires that won't light, doors that open into snowstorms, faces from camps long gone. You wake once to the sound of pigs grunting in the car next to yours and think, they're warmer than me, you're not wrong. By the time the train grinds to a halt on the edge of a town you don't recognise, the sun's hanging low in the sky, orange and thin like a peeled carrot. You jump down, boots hitting gravel hard, and immediately feel the difference. The air still stings, but it doesn't slap. The snow here is slushier, wetter, spattered with mud. Spring hasn't come, but winter's loosening its grip. You follow the tracks into town, boots squelching with each step, the rope in your pack bumping against your spine like a pulse. There's smoke rising ahead. Not black, angry smoke, but there's good kind. Chimney smoke. The kind that smells like food and soap and humanity. Your stomach tightens at the thought. This town's not like the others. You can tell right away. The houses aren't boarded up and the stores have signs that aren't faded into illegibility. There's laughter from somewhere. Actual laughter. Not the bitter kind people spit out between broken teeth. You pull your coat tighter and duck down a side street. You've seen towns like this before. Tight-lipped, shiny on the outside, full of quiet hostility toward anyone who looks like they didn't sleep indoors last night. But then you see it. A porch light flicking on as dusk creeps in, and a figure stepping out of a modest home with a quilt folded over one arm and a steaming bowl in the other. She's older, maybe in her 70s, hair tied back in a bun, apron still on. She sets the bowl down on a wooden table near the edge of the yard. No dog, no shotgun, just a chair and the kind of quiet generosity you don't see much anymore. Then she looks directly at you. She doesn't flinch. Go on, she says, not loudly, not softly either. It's for you. You hesitate. This feels like a trap. But she doesn't move, just waits, arms folded across her chest. The steam curls up from the bowl like a beckoning hand to hand. You step forward slowly, boots crunching half-melted snow, and stop just short of the porch. She nods toward the chair. It's barley stew, she says. Plenty of salt, little bit of beef if you're lucky. Quilt's clean. It's yours if you want to rest. You sit. The chair creaks but holds. You wrap the quilt around your shoulders, soft, handmade, smelling faintly of cedar, and hold the bowl in your lap. It's hot enough to make your fingers ache in a good way. You spoon the stew into your mouth slowly, deliberately. Every bite tastes like memory. You're not even sure what memory, but your body knows it. She watches from the steps for a while, then sits beside you. Used to be my son's, she says, nodding at the quilt. Railroader? Yardman? Caught the fever in 39. You say nothing, just eat. I keep food out now and then, she adds, just in case someone's passing through. You nod. There's a pause, the kind that feels like it should be filled with something profound. She fills it with bread, reaches into her apron and pulls out a small wrapped roll. Still warm, she says, baked this morning. You take it with trembling hands. You're not the first, she continues, probably not the last, but it's cold out there, and I hate the thought of someone going to bed with their ribs hollow. You finish the stew, the bread, every last drop. You sit with the quilt still around your shoulders and feel something creeping in, not just warmth, not just fullness, but something older, gentler, like forgiveness. Don't stay too long, she says, standing. Folks in this town, most of them wouldn't be as kind, but I was raised different. You nod again, words caught somewhere in your throat. She heads back inside, closing the door behind her without looking back. You sit in the chair until the bowl cools in your lap. Then you fold the quilt, gently, reverently, and leave it on the porch rail. You place the empty bowl on top and adjust the spoon so it doesn't roll off. And before you leave, you take your stub of soapstone, pulled from the bottom of your coat, and scratch a small symbol on the wooden fence. The cat, for a kind woman lives here. Then a dot beneath it. Warm food. Trust. That mark might save someone's life. It saved yours tonight. There's a fringe tale about women like her. The Angels of the Line, they are called. No one knows how many there were. Some say just a handful. Others swear every rail town had at least one. They weren't saints. They weren't even always nice. But they believed that no one should starve while they still had a stove running. Most were widows. Some were just tired of pretending that poverty was contagious. Historians call them anomalies. Outliers in a culture increasingly hardened by scarcity. But to you, they're the very core of survival. You walk back to the tracks with full limbs and a full stomach. The world just a little less sharp around the edges. The rope in your pack feels heavier now, not because of weight, but because of meaning. You think about tying a new knot tonight, one you haven't tried yet, a loop for kindness, a twist for bread, a pull for warmth that lingers after the fire dies. You keep walking, you leave the town before sunrise, though your legs would rather stay wrapped in that quilt for one more hour. Your boots feel heavier than usual, probably from last night's stew solidifying into guilt at the base of your stomach. But it's not safe to linger. You've been around long enough to know that kindness has a curfew, and once it expires, it's not the warm hands you meet, but the cold stares, the kind that ask questions with crowbars and flashlight beams. You hike back to the rails, frost crunching beneath your feet, and for a while the world is just quiet. Not peaceful, peace is too clean a word. This is silence earned by exhaustion. Even the wind holds its breath, maybe to give you a moment, maybe to decide whether to rip your coat open again. But either way, it feels like the eye of something, the calm between. You reach a clearing beside the tracks where a few others have gathered. 3 men, 1 woman, and a kid no older than 14 with a scarf wrapped around his face like a stagecoach bandit. They're not talking, just squatting by a low fire made from crushed up boxes and 1 stubborn log. The woman eyes you as you approach, then nods once, sharp and short. You've been accepted into the circle. You hunch down near the fire, letting the heat touch your hands, and that's when you see what they're doing. Socks. All of them are tending to their feet, peeling off stiff wool, massaging toes, checking for the telltale signs, red, white, purple. Frostbite is a subtle enemy. It doesn't announce itself with a scream. It sneaks in like a thief and only robs you when you're asleep or too proud to admit your boots are soaked through. You watch the kid especially. He's wincing as he peels his sock off, revealing a big toe already pale and glassy at the tip. Someone hands him a flask. "Drink fast," the older man says. "It'll burn, but it'll wake you up." The kid does, chokes once, nods, then someone looks at you. "You got your own?" You nod, reach into your pack, and pull out a crusty pair of socks, the ones you've been keeping dry in a bread bag tucked deep between your extra newspaper layers. You peel off your current ones, wincing at the skin underneath, pink, raw, but not yet gone. You flex your toes a few times just to prove to yourself they still work. Then you put the dry socks on slowly, carefully, each motion deliberate like you're reloading your feet. And then comes the strange part, the game. You've seen it in a few camps now. Riders call it the hypothermia game. It's not fun. It's not even a real game. It's survival theatre, an absurd ritual that helps them keep moving forward when the cold turns cruel. The rules are simple. Take off your outer socks, wrap your feet in newspaper or rags, put your boots back on without laces, then run around the fire in circles until the pain in your toes turns to heat or goes numb completely. The goal isn't winning, it's diagnosis. If you can still feel your feet after 3 laps, you're good. If you can't, it's time to find a fire and someone with a pocket knife. The woman stands first. She kicks off her boots, wraps her feet, tightens her coat. 3 laps, she mutters. Or I lose this toe. Then she's off, limping at first, then jogging, then stumbling through lap 2 like her legs have been replaced with frozen fish. Everyone watches silently. It's not entertainment, it's witness. By lap 3, she's breathing hard, her breath sharp bursts in the cold. She stops beside the fire, panting. "Well?" one of the men asks. She leans forward, peels the wrapping off, presses a thumb into her heel. "Still hurts," she says. "Praise be. The others go next. You're last." You stand, strip your socks, wrap your feet with an old flyer you'd stuffed into your pack. Some political promise from a governor who probably never rode anything rougher than a Pullman car, and begin the run. Lap 1, easy, just pain. The sting of blood rushing back into frozen places. Lap 2, harder. Your soles slap against the cold dirt like frozen steaks, and the ground feels miles away from your knees. Lap 3, your vision tunnels, and you swear the fire's dancing sideways. But you finish. You collapse beside the group, breathing like you've outrun a train. Your feet are throbbing, and that's the good news. You sit, slowly unwrap. Press your fingers into the arches. Still there, still hurts. You'll keep them for now. The group breaks apart not long after. One by one, they nod, rise, and vanish toward the tracks. The woman looks back just once, then keeps walking. You stay behind, just a little longer. There's something almost holy about a dying fire after a ritual. The smoke, the ash, the memory of movement. You dig through your pack, find the rope, and untie a small piece from the end. You begin another knot. This one tighter. more intricate. You don't name it. You think about how this life is full of games that no one wants to win. Games where the prize is just keeping the same number of toes you started with. And that, in some twisted way, feels like glory. There's an old debate among scholars, those who've studied the lives of the transient poor during the Great Depression and beyond. Some argue that rituals like the hypothermia game were invented to build solidarity. Others say they were psychological crutches, shared trauma turned into tradition. Either way, they rarely make it into the textbooks, but they should. Because when the fire burns low and your fingers shake too hard to retie your boots, it's not theory or politics that keeps you going. It's the memory of someone else's pain. It's the way a stranger passes you their last dry sock without saying a word. It's the moment your numb feet carry you one more lap around the fire, because not doing so means amputation, or worse. You finish the knot, slide it into your coat pocket like a talisman, then you lace your boots with the hands that still fumble, still sting but still work. And you walk toward the next train, the next camp, the next ritual, not to win, just to keep playing. You don't talk much about the toe, not even to yourself. It happens during a stretch of bitter nights, the kind where your breath freezes to the inside of your coat and your fingers stay curled even when you sleep. It starts as a numbness, same as always, just the familiar pins and needles, nothing unusual. You've had that 100 times before. You figure it'll pass once you find a fire. You're wrong. By the third morning, when you finally get your boots off, the tip of your left big toe is grey. Not the usual, I stayed in the cold too long pale. This is something else. The skin looks like wax, like something stolen from a mannequin and glued onto your foot. You press it. Nothing. No sting, no pressure. Just that empty, dead feeling. Like it belongs to someone else. You stare at it for a long time, then you put your sock back on and lace your boots. Because what else are you going to do? You walk for 2 more days. You find a camp outside of Peoria. 5 men, 2 women, 1 mutt with 3 legs who sits too close to the fire like he knows exactly what you're feeling. You take your place in the circle and wait your turn with the heat. When someone passes a dented tin of corn, you take your share without speaking. You watch the others' feet when they take their boots off. One man has newspaper wrapped around each toe individually like little funeral shrouds. The woman across from you uses strips of flannel dyed red with something that looks a lot like blood. That night you decide to check again. You duck behind a rail car on the outskirts of the camp, use your pack as a windbreak. You peel back your boot and sock. The toe is darker now, charcoal coloured. The nail has started to lift, curling at the edges like it's trying to leave. You run your finger along the side, still no feeling. You consider what you've heard, the stories, that you can lose a toe and keep walking if you're careful, that once the black starts to spread, it's time to make a decision, that some men out here carry wire saws, or knives they keep just for this purpose. You try to remember who told you that. Was it Stitch or Merle? You don't have a wire saw, you have a spoon, and that's not happening. You rewrap the toe and pull your boot back on. Sleep doesn't come easy. Every pulse of blood that pushes through your foot feels wrong. Not painful, just misaligned. Like your body is confused, like it's still trying to keep that toe alive and doesn't realise it's already failed. At sunrise, you limp back into camp and find the fire still going. A man in a threadbare army coat is feeding it with bits of crepewood. He glances up when he sees you. "You walk in funny," he says. You grunt. "Boots stiff." He doesn't push, just nods. That's one of the better things out here. Nobody asks if you don't want them to. There's an understanding. Everyone has a piece of themselves they're holding together with nothing but stubbornness and twine. Later that day, you catch a ride on a coal train. Not in a boxcar, those are all sealed, but in the narrow crawl space between the cars, tucked low and tight against the piles of black rock. It's dirty, it stinks, and the floor vibrates like it's trying to shake your bones loose, but it's all warm. That radiant engine heat soaks up through the floor and into your spine, and for a few blissful hours, your body forgets it's dying in sections. You check your toe once more during the ride, lighting a match in the dark and peeling back your sock like a gift you know you don't want. Still black, still no feeling, but it hasn't spread. That's something. You whisper thanks to whoever's listening, and blow out the match before the wind can do it for you. There's a fringe rumour that some hobos believe the cold itself has moods, that it chooses its victims, that it spares some and punishes others based not on how they dress or what they eat, but on how much they still want to live. It's nonsense, of course, but when your foot starts to rot and you're not even sure if you can still outrun the bulls, it's hard not to feel like the wind's judging you. You ride that train as far south as it'll take you, past Illinois, through Missouri, deep into Arkansas, where the snow thins and the ground starts showing itself again. The trees here don't look like skeletons anymore, just cold trees. The dirt smells like dirt, not frostbite. The rivers aren't frozen over. The air still bites, but it doesn't chew. You limp off the train outside a town called Hope, which is funny enough to make you laugh out loud. First time in weeks, you find a spot behind an old feed store. Nobody's just there, no dogs, no shouting, just a hollow building and a windbreak made from burlap and sheet metal. You rest your pack down, slide your boot off, and check the toe one last time. Still black, but no worse. You dig out your spoon, not to cut, just to feel it in your hand. Then, out of nowhere, you hear footsteps. You freeze. A man rounds the corner, middle-aged, clean-shaven, wearing work boots and a tan coat. Not a cop, not a bull, he looks like he belongs here. He sees you and pauses. You all right? You don't answer. He steps closer, slow. I'm not looking to cause trouble, he says, but I got a heater in my shop. You want to sit by it for a bit, warm up your foot? You stare at him, then nod. He helps you up, careful, not rough, and leads you across the lot to a small metal building. Inside it smells like sawdust and oil. Tools hang on the walls. There's a propane heater in the corner humming quietly. He pulls up a crate for you to sit on. Toe look bad, he asks. You hesitate. Not great. He hands you a tin of antiseptic and a roll of gauze. Better than nothing. You unwrap your sock. He doesn't flinch. Seen worse, he says. He helps you clean it. Doesn't say much else. Doesn't ask where you're from or where you're going. Just makes sure the bandage is tight, then hands you a paper cup of hot coffee. You can't sleep here, he says gently, but you can sit a while. You nod. You sit. And for the first time since the cold started stealing pieces of you, someone gives you the chance to keep something. Not your toe, probably not that, but maybe your pace, your path, your place in the world, ragged as it is. You tie another knot in your rope that night. It doesn't fix the foot, but it reminds you your hands still work. You walk differently now. Not just because of the toe, that's part of it, sure, but something else has shifted. Something deeper in the engine room of your body. You're not limping exactly. It's more like your gait has learned to flinch. Every step is cautious, calculated. You plant each boot like you're waiting for the ground to pull a trick. And maybe it will. Maybe that's fair. You've pulled enough tricks on it. The man at the shop, his name was Carl, by the way, did more than clean your foot and send you off with a bandage and a cup of gas station grade coffee. He gave you something harder to define. It wasn't charity. It wasn't even kindness, really. It was permission. Permission to still be part of the world, even when parts of you are falling off. That's rare. The further south you go, the more the world starts to change around you. Snow becomes mud. Ice becomes puddles. Your breath doesn't hang in the air as long. The wind still bites, but now it feels more like a bark than a mauling. In some towns you even see green, the first brave blades of grass pushing up through the cracks in the rails. The kind of defiance only spring can pull off. You're still riding the lines, still catching out where you can, but now you're looking for something else, not warmth, not food. You're looking for others, hobos, tramps, wanderers, the cold-scabbed tribe of the rail. You're starting to think it might be time to pass something on. And then, one night outside of Texarkana, you find a jungle. This one's bigger than most. At least a dozen tents and lean-tos strung together in a semicircle around a cluster of burn barrels. There's smoke, laughter, the clatter of tin cups. You approach Stooler. Pull, boots dragging, pack slung low, rope coiled tight at your side like a lazy snake. You don't speak until someone spots you. "Rider coming in," a voice calls. A few heads turn, then a nod, just like that, you're in. The group is mixed. A couple of older men, thick with beard and silence. A pair of young women swapping stories and playing cards on a flattened cereal box. A man missing an eye who calls himself Tennessee and speaks in riddles about buffalo he's never seen. You take a spot near a barrel and warm your hands, soaking in the heat like it's a foreign language you're trying to relearn. Someone passes you a can of green beans, still sealed. You nod thanks, but don't open it yet. Not until someone else breaks theirs. There are rules here, unspoken but strong. You wait, and when the one-eyed man cracks open a can of chili with a rusted church key and starts humming a tune. The signal's given, you open your beans and dig in. It tastes like salt and tin. You eat it like it's ambrosia. Later that night, the cards come out again. Dog-eared decks with half the suits missing. replaced with Sharpie sketches and hobo glyphs. They deal a hand your way, and you play, not to win, but just to sit in the game. The laughter comes easy, warm and gravelly. Someone breaks out a harmonica. Someone else has a busted fiddle with only 2 strings. Music happens anyway. Then, like always, the talk turns to winter. Lost a finger in Missouri, someone says, holding up a bare hand with 4 stubs and a shrug. Lost a whole boot in Des Moines, someone else adds. Walked 4 miles in a newspaper burrito. Laughter. Sympathy. Stories like scars shown and shared. You wait your turn. Then quietly you pull the rope from your pack. You hold it in your lap and begin tying a knot. Nothing fancy, just a square knot. Your fingers move slowly but sure. They still remember. You don't speak until the first twist is done. I rode through the worst of it, you say. Blizzard outside Chicago. Took a tow. A few nods, a few winces, no one mocks. Met a man named Leo. Old boilerman. Showed me this knot. You finish it and hold it up. Said it could buy you 2 degrees of warmth. Maybe more if your coat's good. You hand the rope to the person beside you. She's maybe 19, face wind-chapped, eyes hard from miles. She turns it over in her hands, then starts to untie it. Then reties it, slower. When she's done, she hands it to the next. And so it goes. The rope makes its way around the fire, each person tying their version of the knot. Some fumble, some move like they were born with cord between their fingers. But they all try. They all do it. You realise something as you watch this happen. This isn't just ritual anymore. This is language. No one says it loud, but you feel it pass from hand to hand. You're still here. You're still warm enough to tie something. And if that's not magic, it's something close. One of the older men, quiet all night, clears his throat. I remember that knot. Knot, he says. Saw it once. Tied around a pipe in a boxcar outside of Omaha. Thought it was just someone marking territory. You nod. Maybe it was. Maybe it still is. He smiles, slow and crooked. Well, it worked. I saw that rope and figured someone made it out. So I did too. You sit back, the fire flickering against your face, and look up. The stars are out. Clear. No clouds. The kind of sky that only shows itself after the coldest chapters are done. Someone near you is whittling a stick into a spiral. Someone else is sketching a map in the dirt with their boot heel. You wrap the rope back into a coil, looser this time, and slide it into your pack. There's another mark carved into the wood of a nearby tree, one you've seen before, a simple line split in 2 with a circle beneath. Hearts can survive here. No one knows who first made it. Some say it was women. Some say war vets. Some say it was the wind, carving symbols through men too cold to write them down. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the mark is here, and that you're here to see it. The night passes. The fire burns low. People sleep, bodies curled like commas around the barrels. You stay awake a little longer, twisting the end of your rope into one last knot before bed. This one's not for warmth, it's for memory. By the time morning comes, the fire's little more than a hushed whisper in a rusty barrel. The last embers flicker beneath a crust of ash, stubborn as the people who fed them. You stretch slowly, limbs groaning like old wood, and peel yourself up from the cold-packed dirt. The jungle's quieter now. Most of the riders have already gone, vanishing back into the rails like ghosts with boots. You're one of the last to move, and that feels deliberate somehow, like staying behind lets you hold on to what last night gave you. A moment of warmth, a shared silence, a few knots passed hand to hand like psalms. Your toe throbs as you lace your boot. It's dulled now, not a sharp pain, but a kind of aching absence, a low drumbeat reminding you of what's gone. But you can walk, you can move, you can ride, and that's more than some. The sun's coming up hard this morning, pale gold pouring between the trees like spilled whiskey. The sky is wide and open for the first time in weeks. You breathe it in and it tastes like copper and pine. You tell yourself it's a good day to move, not warm but promising. You tie a fresh knot in the rope, something simple, almost lazy, and sling your pack onto your shoulder. As you walk back toward the tracks, you spot the girl from last night, the one who fumbled the knot, cursed under her breath, then grinned when she finally got it right. She's sitting on a boulder with a notebook in her lap, drawing something. You glance down as you pass. It's a map, rough, hand-sketched, but clear. Towns, tracks, symbols you recognize. That stew pot means safe food. That triangle means danger. And right near Texarkana, there's a tiny coiled loop drawn in red pencil, your knot. She notices you looking and gives you a small nod, but doesn't stop drawing. You keep moving. The train you catch that day is slow and mean, a long stretch of livestock cars and open flats with no cover. You find a spot between two pallets of hay bales and wedge yourself in, back pressed to wood, pack between your knees. The wind is constant, tugging at your collar, but you don't shiver the way you used to. You've toughened. Or maybe you've just gotten used to being cold in your bones. You're not sure which is worse. Somewhere around mid-afternoon, the train slows as it pulls through a rail yard and a young man drops into your car from above. Barely 20, if that. Fresh-faced, with a jacket that's more fashion than function and a pair of shoes that scream city kid. He nods at you like it's nothing. You nod back. You ride long? He asks after a while, pulling his coat tight. You shrug. Long enough. He sits, tries to settle in, but keeps shifting like he's got ants in his jeans. They call me Finch, he says. Picked it up from a guy in LA. You just nod again. He's green. You can tell. No rope, no bandana, not even a decent can opener. Everything about him says tourist, or worse, escapee. He talks a lot. About being tired of apartment walls, about how nobody sees you in the city unless you're wearing the right shoes or saying the right thing. About a girl he left behind because she wanted stability and he wanted freedom, though the way he says it makes it sound like he's still trying to convince himself. You let him talk. It's his story, even if it's not a good one yet. Eventually he pulls a crumpled sandwich from his pack, white bread, peanut butter, no crust, and offers you half. You take it because refusing food on the rails is bad luck, but also because you remember being this young, being this sure that the world would reward you for running away from it. He notices your rope as you coil it up and stow it again. You tie? He asks. You glance at him. Sometimes. Can you show me? You think about it. He's green, but he's not arrogant. That's rare. You nod and pull the rope out again, stretching it across your lap like a ribbon of scars. This one's for your pack, you say, forming a loop. Keeps it tight even when the straps give out. He watches. You hand it up to him. He fumbles, then gets it. Barely. This one, you continue, tying a second knot, is for your shelter. He'll run it through two corners of a tarp, won't slip even in wind. He copies it, gets it wrong, tries again, nails it. Hobos. Then you stop. You reach out into your pack and pull out a small length of your older rope, frayed on one end. You hand it to him. For luck, you say. He takes it like it's glass. There's a theory among fringe hobo scholars, yes, they exist, that knots carried between riders acted as a kind of underground language. Not just messages, but markers of who had taught whom. A mentorship woven in loops and friction hitches. Some believe the most respected riders carried knots from 5, 6, even 10 different people. Each one learned during a firelit conversation or a shared ride through a snowstorm. The theory's never been proven. But as you watch Finch tie your knot with both hands, tongue poking out in concentration, you decide it's true enough. The train rolls on. When night falls, the wind sharpens again. You both huddle beneath a tarp he's carrying, barely big enough for two, but you make it work. You show him how to knot the corners to the rail without them slipping loose, and how to weigh the edges with stones so the wind doesn't steal your roof in the middle of the night. He learns fast. Later, as the stars come out, he leans back and sighs. I thought it'd be more romantic, he admits. This life. You laugh quietly, not cruelly, just honestly. It's not. Then why do you do it? You think for a long time. Because it's real? You finally say. Out here, what you do matters. You tie a tarp wrong, you freeze, you light a fire wrong, you burn the whole camp down, you sleep through your stop, you end up 3 states away. He nods, thoughtful. You point to the knot he tied earlier. That knot might save your fingers one day, you say. That's why I'm out here, to pass that along. He stares at it like it's something holy. You both fall asleep to the sound of rails clicking beneath you, the wind trying its best to sneak through every flap of tarp. And when you wake in the morning, the sun's risen, the frost has melted, and Finch is still there. Still tying, still learning. You ride with Finch for 4 more days. That might not sound like much, but in hobo time, it's practically a season. 4 days sharing food, fire, shelter, and silence means you've passed some kind of invisible test. You're not just 2 people dodging bulls and outrunning weather anymore. You're a unit. Not quite a crew, not quite a family, but something in between. You look out for each other, take turns staying awake, split whatever meagre scraps get scrounged or traded along the way. There's no ceremony to it, no agreement. You just start doing it, and that's how you know it's real. The weather gets kinder the farther south you drift. Mornings still carry a bite, but the sun now lingers longer in the sky, stretching warmth like taffy across your back. You're not sweating, not yet, but you're shedding layers in the afternoon and tying your coat around your waist. Finch whistles sometimes, mostly off-key, and it's annoying in the way only young Hope can be. You don't tell him to stop. One morning, you wake to find him staring at his own fingers. They're cracked, red, trembling. They hurt, he mutters, rubbing them together. You nod. They'll hurt worse when they stop, he frowns. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, you say. It's supposed to make you keep moving. Later, you teach him the blood knot, a double loop meant for the emergency tourniquets or makeshift hand wraps. He doesn't ask why you're showing him that one, but he practices it 3 times before stuffing it into his muscle memory, just in case. That's the thing about this life. The just-in-case list is always longer than the one marked essentials. That same night you roll into a small town by the name of Forest Glen. Not on most maps, but big enough to have a diner, a church and a water tower, with rusted stairs you can climb for a better view of your options. You find an old signal shack a mile out from the yard, tucked into the trees, half sunk into the earth. One window's broken, the roof is bowed. Inside it smells like dead leaves and creosote, which is to say, not terrible. You and Finch set up camp inside. No fire, too risky this close to town, but you stuff the cracks in the walls with whatever dry paper and cloth you can find, and you huddle under your tarp like soldiers in a trench. You hear dogs barking in the distance, maybe hunting something, maybe you. It keeps you both awake longer than you'd like. That's when he asks the question. What happens when you get too cold to walk? It's not casual, he doesn't throw it out there like he's fishing for conversation. It's a weight. A stone he's been carrying in his chest since Illinois, maybe longer. You think about lying. You think about telling him the stories of the Hobo Saint again, how sometimes on the coldest nights, warm hand finds you and saves you before the wind can swallow your name. But tonight doesn't feel like a fable night. You find shelter, you say quietly, or you don't. He doesn't say anything, you continue. If your feet go first, you stop moving. If your fingers go, you can't tie knots, can't open cans, can't light fires. That's when the cold wins. He looks down at his hands again. What about you, he asks. You ever lose anything? You consider lying again. Then you remember the toe. Yeah, you say. Lost a piece of myself. Just north of Peoria. He looks up. Still hurts? No, you say. But I still walk different. He nods. That's enough for now. You both fall asleep that night, curled on opposite sides of the shack, listening to the wind rattle the broken pane of glass and the rhythmic breathing of something moving in the woods. Might be a raccoon, might be worse. Either way, you both stay under the tarp and let it pass. The next morning you decide to show him something important. A real jungle, not a casual camp by the tracks, not a scatter of tents and barrels made by chance. A planned jungle. One of the rare ones, built with care and quiet intelligence by riders who'd been doing this long enough to learn how to read a town's pulse. You'd heard of it a few years back. South of Forest Glen, tucked into a tree line beside a bridge no one uses anymore. Hidden. Safe. There's even a rumour that it's got a library, a literal shelf of books guarded in a hollowed-out oil drum wrapped in tarp and wire. Finch perks up at that. A library, he says, grinning. What, like an actual book club? You just grin back. Depends what you're into, but yeah, real books, manuals, field guides, maps, maybe even a romance novel or two, if the raccoons haven't chewed through them. He laughs, and for a moment he's not a half-starved kid with blistered fingers and no future. He's just a young man going to meet a secret world built out of scraps and wisdom. The hike takes hours. You follow the tracks until they split, then duck into the woods, following hobo signs carved into trees, simple glyphs like arrows, spirals, and the ever-familiar crossed lines of safety. The deeper you go, the quieter it gets. You can hear your boots sucking against the mud, birds rustling above, the distant thrum of a freight moving far off on some parallel rail, and then you see it. Tucked into a gully surrounded by brush and saplings bent into an intentional windbreak is the jungle. There's a large lean-to made from railroad ties and sheet metal, flanked by 2 smaller ones. A communal fire ring sits at the centre, ringed with stones. There's even a bench made from an old car door balanced on cinder blocks. Beside it is the oil drum, tall, rusted, wrapped in bungees. Finch stares, wide-eyed. Holy crap! You don't correct him. Someone's already here. An older woman in a red knit hat stirring something in a coffee can over a low fire. She looks up, eyes narrowing. New blood? She asks. You nod. Passing through. Just wanted to see if the stories were true. She gestures at the jungle with a gloved hand. Take a look. Just leave it better than you found it. Finch beelines for the oil drum, pulls off the lid, and lets out a low whistle. Actual books, he mutters, and dry ones. You take a seat by the fire and warm your hands. The woman watches Finch flip through a dog-eared paperback. He yours? She asks. Not exactly, you reply. Just a fellow traveller. She smiles. That's what we all are. Out here, there's no such thing as property, just passing the warmth forward. You think about that, passing the warmth forward. Maybe that's all this ever was, not just fires and coffee and blankets, but knowledge, rope, knots, stories, routes, warnings, shelter signs and borrowed coats, system built on nothing but faith that someone you'll never meet might survive a little longer because you scratched a symbol into a tree. You glance at Finch. He's smiling for real now. You tie another knot, this one tight but not closed. You plan to give it to him before you part ways. You just don't know when that will be. You end up staying at the jungle longer than planned. You tell yourself it's just for the night, maybe 2, just enough time to dry out your socks and get Finch to stop coughing like he's about to lose a lung. But the truth is, this place feels like a pocket of warmth sewn into the side of the world. There's a rhythm here, slow and steady, that lulls the sharp edges out of your bones. Fires are always burning, food always rotating from one pot to the next. Nobody hoards, nobody boasts. People come and go without needing to say hello or goodbye. It's not a camp, it's a system. A living thing built out of habit and cold nights and the silent agreement that survival is easier when shared. Finch calls it the quietest city I've ever seen. You don't disagree. Every morning you wake to the smell of burned oats and wood smoke. Someone's always stoking the embers, poking the coals just enough to bring back the heat. The woman in the red knit hat, Miss Clara, she tells you, turns out to be the jungle's unofficial steward. Not a leader, not a mother, just someone who's stayed longer than most. She knows when to patch the lean-tos, when to set traps in the woods, when to move the library drum deeper under cover to keep it from the rain. She keeps everything running, but she doesn't say much. You speak too loud, she mutters one morning, while Finch is going on about some book he found. You wake up the cold. Finch quiets down after that. One day, as you're breaking kindling by the fire pit, Clara sits beside you. She pulls a small spool of wire from her coat, rolls it between her fingers like a coin. You the one who taught the boy knots? She asks. You nod. He's been practicing, she says. Showed me a hitch yesterday. Good hands, stubborn fingers, but they'll learn. You smile just a little. She leans in. You ever heard of a cold knot? You shake your head. What, like a special kind for winter? Not a winter net, she says, voice low. Cold knot. One that only gets tied when something ends. You wait. She pulls a short piece of frayed cord from her pocket, holds it like a relic. When someone in the jungle dies or disappears or stops riding, we tie one of these, just a simple overhand loop. Tight, no tail, no slip, then we hang it in a tree near the tracks. You think of Leo, of the others who didn't make it. You wonder how many cold knots are out there, flapping like forgotten prayers in the wind. Clara presses the cord into your hand. For when it's time, you nod quietly and tuck it into your coat. That afternoon, Finch builds a shelter on his own. Not a tarp-over branch setup like before, but a proper lean-to, braced with rope and weighted with rocks. He asks you to check it to see if it holds. You test the tension, tight, solid. You learn fast, you say. He beams, then quickly tries to hide it. You sticking around? He asks, like Clara. You shake your head. No. I move on soon. Soon. He nods, but there's something in his face that doesn't settle right. A twinge, a hitch in the smile. He doesn't ask why, he doesn't need to. Riders like you don't stay in one place, that's the whole point. You're not jungle folk. You're still ghost-bound, still chasing, whatever it is that calls you down the line. That night, after dinner, thin stew but hot, you take a walk down the embankment past the old bridge. There's a path worn through the trees where the dirt's been pressed flat by boots older than yours. You follow it until you come to a clearing, and there, hanging from a pine branch, you see them. Knots, dozens of them. Some tied in shoelaces, others in clothesline, paracord, frayed seatbelt straps. Each one different. Some simple, some ornate, all tight, all weathered. You don't touch them, but you count them. 32. You wonder if anyone ever comes back for theirs. If some rider years later stumbles into this jungle again, walks this same path, and finds their name hanging in rope on a branch. You wonder if they feel proud or haunted. You add Leo's knot to the end of the row, just below a tangle of twine that looks like it used to be part of a laundry line. You tie it tight, no tail, no slip, just a final loop. The wind rustles the pine and the knots dance like wind chimes. You walk back to camp slower than usual. Finch is sitting by the fire, carving something into the handle of a spoon with a pocket knife. When he sees you, he lifts it up. A knot. Rough and shallow, not perfect, but clear. You don't say anything, just nod. The next morning you pack your things. The rope, the matches, the newspaper insulation, all of it. Finch wakes when he hears the click of your boot buckles. You leaving now? Yeah. He sits up, rubbing his eyes. You sure? You nod. He fidgets with his coat, then pulls something from the inside pocket, a strip of cloth tied in a knot. Your knot. The first one you showed him. I tied it again, he says. This time I got it right. You take it, untie it slowly, retie it, then hand it back. You'll need it. He swallows hard, then gets to his feet and throws his arms around you. You freeze just for a second, then pat his back once. That's enough. Clara's by the woodpile, sipping coffee. You gonna come back? She asks. You glance toward the bridge, toward the hanging knots. Maybe, you say. She nods like that's the right answer. Finch walks with you to the edge of the trees. You give him one last nod, then start walking the rails. North, this time. It's still cold, but the air smells different. Lighter, less like ice, more like something you might breathe without pain. There's a hobo sign etched into a concrete tie near the crossing, one you don't recognize. A circle with a tail. Maybe it's new. Maybe Finch left it. You scratch a loop beside it. No name, no message, just a knot. And then you walk on, rope bouncing at your side, steps slower, steadier, limping a little less. You walk until your legs stop asking questions. There is something therapeutic in the rhythm of it. The steady crunch of gravel beneath your boots, the clack of distant trains echoing through the cuts and valleys, the sighing wind that no longer howls but hums, like a lullaby sung through rusted teeth. You've always said the rails talk, and out here, alone again, you start listening harder. Every creak, every groan in the track feels like it's saying keep going just a little farther. There's no set destination. There never was. You ride until the weather changes again, until the air carries that southern drawl of warmth, soft and sticky like molasses on your skin. Spring's teasing the edges of the land, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you can smell earth. Not frozen dirt or wet ash, but honest, living soil. Somewhere north the cold still prowls, but here, now, it's lost your scent. You ride a short flat car through Mississippi, hiding beneath a tarp left behind by some long-gone drifter. There's no one else on board. Just you, your pack, and the rope. You've untied and retied it so many times now it's like a muscle memory. Each knot is a story. Leo, Finch, Clara, the hypothermia game, cold knots, the stew pot symbols and jungle books and secret campfires guarded by silence. You could close your eyes and feel the whole road wrapped in loops and tails and tension. You reach a town called Willow Ridge sometime around dusk. The train doesn't stop, but you bail anyway. Boots hitting gravel hard, knees jolting from the impact, but you stay on your feet. Always stay on your feet. That's rule number 1. You hobble for a few paces, shake off the stiffness, then start looking for smoke. Not long after, you find a sign scratched into a telephone pole near the old depot, a triangle pointing down. Danger. But it's been crossed out and marked over with a small X. Not cancelled, updated. Someone's been here recently, someone watching. You follow your instincts, weaving past abandoned sheds and a rusted grain silo, and eventually find it, a 3-person jungle tucked between a patch of overgrown vines and a derailed boxcar, half buried in kudzu. A fire flickers low, and the smell of beans and pepper drifts through the air. 2 men are there, and 1 woman, all older than you. Riders from a different era. You nod as you approach, and they do the same. A silent invitation. You sit. They pass you a bowl. No introductions, no names. Just the ritual. Fire, food, silence. The woman breaks it first. You from up north? You nod. Make it through the freeze. You pull your boot off, tug down your sock and show the toe. There's a murmur of recognition, a nod from one man who lifts his pant leg and reveals a shin blackened with old frostbite. Had to learn the rope trick, he says. Thought it was baloney at first, but it bought me nights I wouldn't have survived otherwise. You smile faintly. Leo taught me. They go still for a moment. Leo from the West Line, one asks. Boilerman. You nod again. The man shakes his head slowly. He saved me once, back in 50-year-old. Showed me how to burn coal chunks clean. It's funny, you think, the way names echo down the line, like ghosts still riding the boxcars, leaving little fingerprints behind in fire circles and rope knots. After dinner, you all pass the time with trade talk. What towns are cold to riders, which ones still put out coffee and bread behind the missions, what yards have fresh bulls with short tempers. You listen more than you speak. The elders have seen more than you, and they speak with the careful weight of those who've had to count their fingers after too many winters. Eventually, the woman produces a bundle of cords. Not rope, strings, twine, bits of laces, wire, yarn, all knotted. A tapestry of tiny ties and loops frayed and blackened with age. You keep a knot book, you ask. She nods. Since 45, every person I rode with left one. Didn't matter what kind, just had to tie it themselves. I got stories in here that ain't been spoken in decades. She lets you hold it. The knots aren't labelled, just grouped by year, sectioned by the route. East, Midwest, Southern Compass Coast, it's a map of sorts. A language built not with words, but with tension and loops. You turn it over slowly, reverently, then you add one of your own, a double wrap bowline with a loop through the tail. New, unique, your signature. She smiles. The man with the frostbitten shin lifts his mug. To the rain! Everyone echoes. To the rope. That night, you lay beneath a rusted sheet of metal propped against a log, your pack tucked beneath your head and the rope coiled under your arm like a sleeping dog. You stare at the sky through the leaves, and for the first time in a long time the stars feel close enough to touch. No clouds, no snow, no ice waiting to chew through your boots. You drift off thinking about Finch, about Clara and her cold knot, about how one day when the riding ends, your own story might hang from a branch somewhere, fluttering quietly in the wind, telling someone, I was here, I survived, I passed it on. By dawn the others are already up. You share a final cup of coffee, burn your trash, bury the fire. No trace left, that's the rule. You shake hands quietly and go your separate ways. Before you leave, you carve a sign into the side of the boxcar, a rope knot. No symbol, no name, just the knot itself. It'll say what it needs to. You step back onto the rails, alone again but not lonely. The sun's rising behind you, painting the track ahead in warm gold. The road hums beneath your feet like it's remembering every mile you've walked. You keep walking, steps easy, breath steady, rope light in your pack. One foot after another, still walking, still tying, still here. So here you are, back in bed, tucked beneath your own version of a tarp. Maybe it's a down comforter, maybe it's just an old hoodie and the hum of a space heater. But it's yours. And tonight, somewhere in the deep static of sleep, maybe you'll feel it, the echo of boots on gravel, the whisper of rope sliding through your fingers, the slow clack of wheels turning in the distance like a lullaby built on steel and survival. You've followed every mile of this cold journey, walked every frostbitten mile in someone else's shoes, and somehow you made it. You know how to tie the knots now. You know what they mean. Maybe what we're really talking about here, beneath the wool coats and the burn barrels and the frozen beans, is how people hold on to each other when the world stops caring. How warmth is passed hand to hand through rituals as small as a knot, as quiet as a gesture, as fleeting as a nod between strangers who might not ever meet again. The cold never really ends, not entirely. Even in the warmth it waits, but so does the knowledge, the stories, the rope. So if you dream tonight, and I hope you do, maybe you'll be standing by the tracks, a coil of line in your hand, watching the smoke rise from a jungle where someone's singing off key and someone else is making coffee from the last of their grounds. Maybe you'll walk into that fire circle, sit down and tie something. Doesn't matter what knot it is, just tie it. Leave it behind and someone will find it. Someone will carry it forward. That's how this works. That's how you work now. And when morning comes, when your room fills with soft, real light and your fingers stretch and your feet touch the floor, I hope you walk a little lighter, knowing you've been somewhere harsh and made it back. You probably won't lose any toes today. That's a win. Sweet dreams, rider. The rails are quiet tonight.